and in doing so, greetings to staff and members of the public in the gallery. Could I remind you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. It will be available on the Regional Council website at the conclusion of this meeting. And in doing so, could I also remind you that under the local government decision-making model, any decisions or protection offered to councillors and officers that may be subject to public comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in the court of law and determined to be slanderous, it gives you no protection. Opening karakia, Councillor White, would you be so kind?
Mr. Chair, tuatahi, te ariki nui, kingi tu heitia, potato te whero tua whetu, moi mai rā ka tuatigara, moi mai rā, te koini hau, ngā wai hono i te pō, tū mai rā, e te tiamana tēnā koe, he me man ka kauni hera, pei te miha tuki a koe, me koutou hoki ngā kaimahi, me ngā memo te hāpori e hui mai nei tēnei ngā, kei te miha tuki a koutou, karakia poto mo tātou. Manawa mai te Māori nuku, manawa mai te Māori rangi. Ko te Māori kai aho, he Māori tipua. Ka pakuru mai I te pō, tau mai te Māori haumi e hui e taiki e. Bring forth the life forces of the earth, bring forth the life forces of the sky. May the life forces we bring here collectively today shatter all darkness in the conversations before us today. Let us be together. Amen. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Councillor White. Next agenda item is apologies. We have no apologies. We have Councillor Crosby on Zoom as well as Councillor Toi Iti on Zoom. We now have the public forum, and in terms of the public forum, it's my pleasure to welcome Gabriel Walton and Richard Baum from the Summerhill Charitable Trust. If you'd like to come forward, please. And you've got 20 minutes to make a presentation in terms of your issues at Summerhill, and your presentation has been circulated to councillors. So welcome once again, and the floor is now yours.
Tēnā koutou katoa. As you said, I'm Richard Baum from the Summerhill Charitable Trust, and with me is Gabriel Walton, another trustee. Summerhill Charitable Trust was established in 2012 when David and Chloe Blackley gifted their farm to the people of the Bay of Plenty and Aotearoa, New Zealand. They didn't want to see that beautiful spot go into 10-acre blocks or into houses, and so made a very generous gift to the people. The trustee says that we will remain a working farm and forest and that be open to the public. So that as trustees, we take that very seriously and have tried to honour that gift. So since 2012, our visitation has grown. We are immediately adjacent to the Papamoa Hills Cultural Heritage Regional Park. And many people will stop in our car park or start in our car park and journey or walk across to the regional park. And in many ways we act as sort of the western entrance to the regional park. But with increasing visitors, there are some growing pains, and currently our car park is showing signs of
segregation.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So we've wanted to talk to you about our car park today, and we have prepared a short video which outlines the issues, which we could show now.
Yes.
Yep.
We'll be happy to take some questions after the video. Summerhill is a working farm forestry property run by a charitable trust open to the public 7 days a week. Located on the western boundary of the Papamoa Hills Cultural Heritage Regional Park, Summerhill serves as alternative access to the significant regional park. Visitors park in our car park and walk across our land to reach the regional park boundary. We are a particularly attractive access to the elderly, young families and school groups who do not wish to climb the steep access from Poplar Lane. The existing car park was established in 2012. Converted from our old cattle yards, with recycled materials and a thin layer of metal from Fulton Hogan's quarry. The surface quality, edging and drainage is no longer fit for purpose and causing us major issues. With growing numbers of visitors, we also need more order in the car park. This area, for example, could have housed 5 more vehicles, but there is no guidance for this. Oropi Mountain Bike Park closed as of the 1st of September this year. We are now the only mountain bike park open close to the Tauranga and Mount Maunganui population. We are currently hosting the Ames Games with 350 mountain bikers plus spectators and administration. During this event and others, the car park becomes the control centre and needs to function effectively. Last year, during the rains, the car park was half underwater and mud became an issue for emergency services and school tent structures. With growing visitor numbers and the building of a small community hub by our woolshed, the Western Bay of Plenty District Council have asked us to improve the line of sight for entry and exit of the car park. We appreciate the importance of this and believe it is the opportune time to improve the entire car park, improve drainage, resurface, and give definition to parking spaces. We have costed this work at $130,000 plus GST. Summer Hill is sustainable because of donations and volunteer help. We have always opened our gates to those wishing to access the regional park. During your forest harvest, we were giving the access. An investment in improving this expressway will not only assist the regional park, but improve the experience for all visiting the Papamoa Hills. Thank you. That's a short presentation. I hope it refreshes your memory, those who've been to Summer Hill, and establishes our quest for some assistance with doing up the alternative access car park to the regional park. We, as we've written and you've probably read in your notes today, we did approach PIM about this last year, and he encouraged us to come to you for some assistance with the funding of this, and hence that's why we're here today. Any questions?
Firstly, thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Richard, for that comprehensive yet very concise presentation. Councillors have had it in their agenda pack, so we've got an appreciation. And firstly, congratulations again to yourself and or PIM for taking that cost from originally it was going to be $365, I think, down to about $130 now. So well done. Councillors, questions? Councillor Von Duddleston.
Firstly, a huge thank you from the community at large for the work that you and your family have put into this venture. The commitment of the Blakely family is huge and fully recognised. So, I empathise. I know it missed getting funding in the long-term plan, but this is something that I think will benefit the regional park. As you say in your video, the access for elderly and youth is not to be underrated. And I've walked from your place to the top of the park, and it's a very easy walk there. So I think the funding mechanism going forward will require, I'm not sure, but probably annual plan or something to help with funding. But your cause is warmly recognised. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Councillor Neese.
Thank you very much. I just have a question. You've done a sterling job at reducing the costs of the work. Just wanted to make sure that you were within your new costing, you're still able to raise the level, so you're not going to have flooding of your car park?
No, that's correct. We can deal with the drainage much better. We're proposing just a chip seal surface as opposed to a full tar sealing asphalt surface. And we can drain into the paddock on the eastern side, and on the western side, there's a good drain out in the on the road edge that we can also access. So it just means improving the existing levels and then getting a better surface flow off that rather than ponding like it does at the moment. And also giving it correct edges. At the moment, when we established that car park, which I designed, we were just using the old cattle yard half round railings, and you can't actually join any sort of asphalt to a round surface. Better to be square. So little things like that will make a huge difference and improve the whole situation.
Thank you.
Councillor White.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was very succinct and to the point. And, you know, I don't see it personally as a subset of Papamoa Hills. It's actually a nice completion of the totality of the experience. So, yeah, no, and the fact that, you know, you've been able to reduce the costs on this because it's always on people's minds around costs. I think that itself also improves the picture. So thank you. I'm excited for you. Thank you.
You make a good point, because really the public are just seeing one big open space, and really the public are getting almost doubling the size of the regional park at no extra cost currently. So,
Councillor McMillan.
Oh, kia ora, morning, and thanks for coming in. And it was great for Councillor Crosbie and I to come and see you in situ recently. I suppose I just wanted to highlight to councillors that this is actually a really good problem to have. You know, our numbers have doubled in Papamoa Hills, our regional park, and hence the high traffic your end too, because as you've highlighted, it's another access way to the Papamoa Hills Regional Park. And as Councillor White said, a lot of people don't know the difference. You know, it's one piece for them. Yes, you can mountain bike on your area, on your trust land, and you can't mountain bike on ours. Apart from that, it's pretty seamless. And so I think it's a really exciting space to have arrived at, that there are that many people in our community utilising not only our upgraded car park and accessing that way, but also from your side, numbers ramping right up. And it's really exciting to know that there's, that all of that activity is going on and being enjoyed by so many. So, good problem to have. Nevertheless, it is a challenge and it does need resolving. Thank you.
Any other commentary, councillors? If not, Gabriel, could I thank you and Richard? I've been to Summer Hills several times. Could I say that I think you have always been a very responsible group in terms of asking for things that are really needed. The increase in visitors to your facility as well as the adjoining park is simply outstanding. And I think this is a community asset that we all need to help develop and support the volunteers in terms of what you're doing there. But the real issue is you've asked us for some money, as Councillor Von Duddleson said, you know, it's outside the realm, or it's not outside the realms, but it wasn't part of our LTP consideration. So I'm going to suggest to the Chief Executive that staff bring back a proposal to Council after taking into account what your request is, and we'll see if we can meet your expectation in some form. And I appreciate that summer's around the corner, and when you've got a facility like that in terms of just cold aggregate, it creates an issue around dust, and there's a security issue in terms of access to and from the site. So Fiona, what is an appropriate time frame that staff could come back to us in response to the request we've got today?
Yes, good morning, councillors. And if councillors were of a view, you could also consider this in terms of your review of the Community Initiative Fund. You do have unallocated funding from your long-term plan deliberations in that fund. And so you have a workshop in early October and then potentially coming back to the next council meeting.
Okay, there we are, councillors. That's how we'll proceed. Richard, thanks very much. Gabriel, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillors, that takes us through to agenda item 4, items not on the agenda. There are none. Order of business, number 5, there's no change to the order of business. Declaration of conflict of interests. Councillor Crosbie.
Yes, Chair, 10.10 and 11.1 with regard to Quayside.
Noted. Councillor Crosbie.
Likewise,
Councillor White.
Likewise.
Thank you. Item 6, public excluded business to be transferred into the open. There is none. That takes us through to the regional council minutes. Firstly, we will deal with the minutes of the 1st of August. I'll move they be in true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Any matters arising out of those minutes? If not, we'll go through to the minutes of the 13th of August. I'll move. Councillor first and second. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Any matters arising out of those minutes?
Mr. Chair, I missed it as an apology, yet I opened and closed the meeting with a karakia. So I must have been in the spiritual realm at that point. I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor White. Then we've got the emergency minutes of the 15th of August. I'll move the true and correct. Councillor Nee, second. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right. That takes us through to agenda item number 9, presentations. Dennis. So the presentation is Lakes Freshwater. As you know, Chair Professor Dennis Oskondaksi, the annual report for 23-24. Welcome, Dennis. Welcome, Andy.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman, kia ora, councillors. I won't spend too much time introducing Dennis because I think you've met him at least once before at his last annual report. But Dennis has been with us now for about 2.5 years. So this is, I think, his second annual report to the council here. And I think it's just really pleasing to see the development of the team that he's got at the university there and the work that he's doing. And in particular, a lot of the work that's connecting to our requirements in terms of running management and changes to the Lakes program. So I'll hand over to Dennis. He's got a presentation on the screen there and let him explain how things have developed in the research scene with the university over the last 12 months. Thank you, Dennis.
Kia ora, Chairman. Kia ora, councillors. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to present my second annual report to this group. As Andy suggested, we've experienced sustained growth in terms of the team members and the work and research funding that we are working with. I'm assuming that everybody has seen the report, so my presentation today will primarily focus on some of the research aspects, and the financial statement and other aspects are documented in the report. Just wanted to highlight that I'm speaking on behalf of quite a large team that we have now working at the university and across with collaborators, covering quite a large range of freshwater research disciplines, including ecology, chemistry, modelling, and invasion ecology. So it's quite a broad spectrum of activities that we're doing. I'm only presenting a snapshot of some of the work that we've been doing. I just wanted to highlight that the team has grown quite substantially, and we're very pleased to be able to attract some talent from overseas, including United States, South America, South Africa, Europe, and India. So pretty happy with the way that the team is sort of growing and bringing different perspectives and cultures to the team. We're working under 5 broad research themes, only touching on a few today, really, with regards to the ecological restoration research theme where we are supporting the Bay of Plenty Regional Council with lake restoration and management activities. I want to highlight the climate change impact research that we are doing and thinking about going forward. And I want to highlight a couple of projects today that are related to Matauranga Maori and Mahinga Kai in particular. As Andy suggested, our team is deeply involved in some of the management and restoration activities in and around the Rotorua Lakes. I want to highlight two major projects that we've been involved in. One is the Lake Rotorua Science Review, which was completed last year. I did present a snapshot of that last year. I wanted to highlight that there's a 5-yearly review cycle with quite a lot of research underpinning that review and recommendations in that report, utilizing state-of-the-art methods, including modeling techniques, and utilizing and capitalizing on long-term data sets that the Regional Council now holds, which is invaluable for us to track restoration success and informing future direction of the management program. The second project I wanted to highlight is the Auhau Channel Diversion Wall, for which we just completed the 7-year review, which is fundamentally a consent review cycle. But we are taking these review cycles as an opportunity to update the underlying research and key findings that underpin the original decisions. And with that in mind, I wanted to show you some of the updated work on some of the modeling techniques that we've been using in Lake Rotorua Iti. This is just sort of a video clip of the hydrodynamic processes in Lake Rotorua Iti, where we're tracing the water coming into Lake Rotorua Iti from the Auhau Channel. So this is the nutrient-laden water from Lake Rotorua that is connecting to Lake Rotorua Iti via the Auhau Channel. These are simulations that we developed as a scenario before the diversion wall was implemented in the lake. So we can see there's quite a complicated pattern in terms of the water that's coming into the lake from the Auhau Channel, distributing nutrient-rich water throughout the lake, causing water quality problems in Lake Rotorua Iti. So when the diversion wall was implemented, we found with our modeling scenarios, and these are video clips now also showing tracing the water from the Auhau Channel through Rotorua Iti in two scenarios, one at the top with the wall in place and the bottom video clip without the wall in place. And quite clearly you can see that the water has been successfully diverted away from Lake Rotorua Iti. The video was sped up quite substantially just to make sure that we visualize it, and otherwise we can sort of spend an hour watching these videos. I guess one of the points I wanted to make really is that we've been able to capitalize on 20 years of monitoring data that is available for these lakes now, which opens a whole new area of research for us in terms of looking at long-term dynamics in those lakes, understanding long-term trajectories and restoration success in those places. What we found by utilizing that data set is really that the wall has actually resulted in a measurable improvement in Lake Rotorua Iti in terms of nitrogen concentrations and water clarity, which has also resulted in a substantial and measurable improvement in the trophic level index, which remains a very important indicator of water quality in those lakes. What we also found in this study is that the lake is actually still responding to those changes that came about after the wall was constructed. And this is really important context for us to understand those long-term trajectories of these really large ecosystems that take decades to respond to these interventions. And with that in mind, I wanted to touch on what we felt was really important piece of work in Lake Roto'ehu, or at least the work started in Lake Roto'ehu, looking at these long-term trajectories of trophic level index data sets. You see on that graph, we can focus on the black line, which indicates the trophic level index as it is reported on by the Regional Council. So these are annual values of water quality in the lake, and Lake Roto'ehu has a trophic level index target of 3.9. Unfortunately, for most of the monitoring period, the TLI target is exceeded, which is something that we're working on at the moment to understand the management needs to bring the lake closer to its target. A couple of things I wanted to highlight is actually the variability that we're now discovering in these data sets. So water quality is driven by a whole range of different factors that are often not manageable, including weather, climate, and those sort of things. So it's not of course it's an indicator of nutrient enrichment and therefore reflects land use activities, but the lakes are so dynamic and respond to different factors. And so one of our talented postdocs here, Whitney, has embarked on understanding those factors, and she's deploying state-of-the-art statistical methods to understand the relative importance of all of these different drivers that might affect water quality dynamics in those lakes, which will help us to understand why we sometimes exceed the TLI targets, for example, and why lakes respond as they do to these different factors. So she's looking at different weather and climate variables, water level fluctuations, and internal dynamics in the lake that are frequently monitored by the regional council. And what she's been able to identify is that, at least looking at one variable as an example here, this is highlighting water level dynamics in Lake Roto'ehu over that same monitoring period, really. She found with her analysis that water level is a major driver of trophic level index in Lake Roto'ehu, in particular with regards to some extreme events. So during the mid-1990s, there was a severe drought indicated there with that red circle, which actually has resulted in a step change in water quality in the lake, which we've discussed and attributed to dramatic changes in internal dynamics that has resulted in a step change of degradation in the lake. Likewise, during pretty high lake levels in the mid-2010s to 15, has resulted in a reduction in TLI, and we can attribute that to changes in internal dynamics and dilution effects.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I just get a clarification on that point around the degradation at high water levels and the lesser degradation when it's low? Can you just clarify what the mechanisms behind that?
Yeah, so during those extreme low lake levels, what we saw in the lake is that it changed the mixing regime in the lake. So these lakes do stratify, which means they separate into different layers. And that triggers a whole range of internal feedback loops that actually recycles nutrients much more severely internally. What we saw during those lake levels was that those patterns increased dramatically. So we saw an increase in internal recycling of nutrients that shifted the lake into a poorer water quality state at that point. What we think is happening is that the lake actually is remaining in that state. It hasn't shifted back into these better trophic level index values. What we suspect at the moment is that that event was a major driver to keep that lake in this relatively poor state. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that as water level as a key variable that, at least in Lake Roto'ehu, is not managed very easily. But also other factors like the weather conditions that drive water quality dynamics can't be managed directly, which really provides us with context around the recent changes in Lake Roto'ehu water quality, where the TLI has exceeded its target 3 years in a row, and we are using this kind of analysis to put these changes into context.
Yeah, just one more while I'm on Lake Roto'ehu, because I think it's an important one. Did a tour on Lake Roto'ehu, and when we got down to one point at the far end towards the north, there's a Māori view in the story, an historical view of the water used to channel down and exit at that point. Used to dive down, but there's no sort of evidence of that happening. Is there any? Have you made any observations in that space?
No, we're relying on some of those anecdotal observations still to actually drive our thinking around that. So we haven't made actual measurements of that.
Seen as a significant drainage point out of Roto'ehu.
Yeah, and we
just a point on that. When the lake was draining out at that point, and that was about 1994, 1995, the lake would have been 3.5 to 4.5 meters lower in level to what it is today. So that's probably the reason why it's hard to observe anything when it's at the level that it is now. It's much, much higher.
Thanks, Andy, for that context. I wasn't around then. I just wanted to also highlight that this sort of analysis we started in Lake Roto'ehu and provides really important context for us. We're now about to complete the similar work for other Te Arawa lakes, and I'm just highlighting 6 of the lakes that have very contrasting trophic level index sort of dynamics. Hopefully that graph is sort of reasonably clear with all the different colors representing a different lake and the trophic level index over that sort of long-term monitoring period here. The graph on the right-hand side represents temperature distributions in Lake Rotorua at the top and Lake Okaro at the bottom, with the red colors indicating warm temperatures and blue colors indicating cold temperatures. This sort of data set is derived from those real-time monitoring buoys that are located on those lakes, recording important information every few minutes for us, and it's telemetred onto into the cloud. And we are using this sort of data to understand the trajectories and dynamics of those lakes in a way that we didn't really understand those lakes in the past. Just want to highlight the contrast and the difference between the temperature distribution in at least 2 of the lakes, and every lake has a unique pattern to these water quality variables. This one aspect I'm really wanted to touch on is climate change impacts on those freshwater bodies, and we're focusing our efforts currently on understanding climate change impacts on the lakes, really. I just wanted to highlight one of the elements of climate change impacts is the change in flooding frequency across Aotearoa. This graph I'm showing that the number of floods has significantly increased since the late 70s, from what we sort of understand was 1 to 2 floods per year to somewhere around 4 to 7 floods per year in recent years. These sort of statistics are pretty alarming for us, and trying to understand the effects on lake ecosystems. Can easily put up other statistics that suggest that the top 6 hottest years on records were actually happened in the last 10 years. Those sort of things we need to know. We need to understand the impacts on lake dynamics and what the implications are for current and future management implications. The right-hand side is a newly released map interface online, just recently released by NIWA, which was commissioned by MFE, which highlights the next generation or the latest generation of climate projections for New Zealand, which with large parts of the Bay of Plenty region in this particular graph showing an increase in rainfall, total rainfall over summer by the end of the century. So with this in mind, we are currently looking at understanding the effects of climate change on flooding in lakes Rotomā and Roto'ehu. We have Katie, a very talented master's student, working on constructing and developing a complete hydrological cycle for those lakes, which we will then use to, in a modeling framework, to simulate the effects of climate change on flooding in those lakes, which I'm showing some photos here that Andy shared with us on the extent of flooding around those lake communities during Cyclone Gabrielle in 2023. And this is really something that we need to understand much better going forward. I'm showing here the long-term pattern of lake level dynamics in Rotomā all the way back to the 1950s. Showing 2 events that we'll be particularly interested in is the severe drought conditions across New Zealand in the early 1990s, which sort of corresponds to the low lake levels that we saw in Roto'ehu as well. That drought event was actually labeled in large parts of New Zealand as 1 in a 200-year drought event. And we compared that to the high lake levels in 2023 during Cyclone Gabrielle, where lake levels have risen quite substantially, flooding the communities. With the climate change projections that we have from the latest generation of climate models, we can expect an increase in frequency and severity of those rainfall events, creating more flooding issues. And for us, it's a really good place to start looking at those lakes where we have these long-term records to test our models and our assumptions. Climate change is also driving a lot of the work that we're currently doing in collaboration with Te Arawa Lakes Trust and Cawthron Institute as part of a large national scale project. One of our PhD students is looking at restoring freshwater habitats for culturally significant species and future resilience. And he is involved in a project led by Ian Cusaps, building artificial reefs in the Te Arawa Lakes to provide habitat and refuge for Kaura. And as you know, in some of the Te Arawa Lakes, Rotu Iti and Rotorua, catfish has invaded and is now causing problems for the Kaura population. And other places like Lake Okaro, which is what you're seeing on those photos here, water quality is still a limiting factor for Kaura to thrive in those lakes. So we're testing if artificial reefs provide the necessary habitat and refuge for those species to thrive. This photos from the construction of a reef in Lake Okaro just last month. And you see that Ian Cusaps and Andy, I think you are somewhere hidden in that photo as well. The orange jacket, yeah. So it's a big team effort to put in these reefs, and a PhD student is now looking at understanding the effectiveness of those. So the climate change element comes into play for these sort of management actions, where we are now understanding much better the effects of climate change on lakes from a temperature and oxygen perspective, really. This concept has been around for a while, where we're putting the squeeze on fish with climate change, where surface water temperatures are going to increase substantially, which creates an inhabitable area for fish. And the bottom waters will likely become much more anoxic, so devoid of oxygen, which is necessary for life. And that means that biota in those lakes will be squeezed into a very thin layer in the middle of lakes, unfortunately. We've now incorporated that into our current modeling framework, where we are simulating especially temperature and oxygen in those lakes under climate change scenarios. And we're finding that climate change will put a squeeze on all species, including Kaura and Kakahi. The graph that you're seeing on the right the black line represents the shape of a lake, or at least cut in half. And the colors represent the different habitat quality areas for Kaura and Kakahi, with blue indicating optimum habitat quality, all the way to yellow, which indicates very stressful or lethal habitat quality. And you can see that during summer that the blue area, which is the optimum habitat, is just a very small layer in the middle of the lake. So we're now working with Te Arawa Lakes Trust on taking this a step further. They are very interested in understanding what we can do to increase that blue area in the lake, especially during summer. Artificial reefs could provide an important mechanism to provide refuge during summer, maybe in some of the shallower areas of the lake. So we are launching into a master's level research project to better understand what can be done to actually increase habitat quality in those lakes under climate change scenarios. Yep.
Are you monitoring the population of Kaura? Yeah, and so has that already declined dramatically?
Yeah, so the Kaura monitoring is done by Ian Cusaps at the moment regularly for the Te Arawa Lakes. So at least in Lake Rotu Iti, the Kaura population has declined. It was about 95% since monitoring began. And there was a very clear step change at the time that catfish invaded the lake. So we know catfish eat Kaura, especially small juvenile Kaura. And we've dissected some of the catfish and found Kaura in their stomachs, basically.
So when those artificial reefs are made, do you introduce some extra kaura into those reefs, or do you just wait for the existing ones to come and find that reef?
Yeah, it might be a little bit of both. For now, we are waiting and to see if they would actually recolonize those areas, which is a very common hypothesis for creating habitat for species. If you build it, they will come, which is likely going to happen in Lake Roto Iti, where coral populations are still there. And we're hoping that they will colonize those areas over time. In places like Okaro, where coral populations no longer exist, there might be an opportunity to sort of repopulate those areas. But taking coral away from other places that are already under stress is something that we need to think about very carefully. Right. I wanted to advertise a project that we have in the pipeline. We are waiting a funding decision tomorrow. I was hoping I can give you some good news today. We are very positive that we will get the funding for this project that we submitted to MB as a research proposal under the Smart Ideas funding scheme, which is looking at creating an almost real-time forecasting system of water quality in lakes, looking at different attributes, including temperature, oxygen, and hopefully cyanobacteria as well in those lakes. And we're using Lake Rotorua as a case study because it's one of the best monitored lakes across New Zealand. If we're ever going to build a successful forecasting system, Rotorua is our best shot really at this. And we are using some really sophisticated statistical tools to make sense of all of this data that has been collected over decades in that lake. Nobody has been able to integrate all of these data sets into a meaningful predictive tool, and we feel that artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques will provide us with a tool to synthesize that data and generate lake water quality forecasts aligned with weather forecasts. So that's sort of the ambitious goal of where we want to go with that. I wanted to sort of put some expectation management caveats around this. This is the first time that we will be doing this in New Zealand. We don't know if this is going to work. And I remember very well that about 20 years ago, weather forecasts were also not very great. They're very poor, and with 20 years of research, they've now finally managed to give us hourly forecasts or daily forecasts pretty accurately. So we're just at the beginning and in infancy with this type of research, with the funding decision being announced tomorrow around midday, actually.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question on this one here, because it's a really interesting one, but I've always been concerned about the old rubbish dump, and people have heard me rabbit on about this. Tons and tons of rubbish dumped directly into the lake over a period of 20 plus years. It's been 50, 60 years ago, and it must be very ripe because it was undifferentiated rubbish, industrial and everything thrown in the pot. In many respects, the old Pualinga stream was running absolutely black. So it is significant that you would argue that there's significant leaching of all sorts of chemicals into the lake. It's some sort of very heavy volume, I would think, which must have some particular impact on the lake itself. But nobody has done any research, to my understanding, of the impacts of that particular situation in Lake Rotorua. In your sense of the direction here, what would be your view on the impacts of that type of scenario? And is it worth operating some research on the implications of that as well? Because I don't think people like to hear about that particular situation.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I'm not sure. We haven't really thought about this, so thanks for bringing this to my attention. My initial instinct would be to think about maybe a pilot study to understand the current state of maybe those chemicals that might be of concern.
Because when they did a transect across the lake and they were looking at doing some studies at certain points, it didn't go as far as that particular rubbish dump area. It stopped short of it. I always wondered why.
Perhaps wonder if I could intervene there, and Dennis may not be aware of the details of that old site. And I understand that there was some monitoring of that done, it would have to be 30 years ago. And perhaps the best thing we could do is make Dennis aware of that work and then get some comment from him after that time to the impact of it.
Because as a child, I was guilty, along with all of my families, of just dumping rubbish there because it was our residential rubbish dump. So I just want to have some sort of sense of, reconciliation with that particular situation. Yeah, sure.
Yep, so this was my last slide, so thank you very much for the opportunity to present my annual reports, and I'm also happy to have another discussion about this. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Andy. Councillor McMillan.
Oh, thank you. I'm just interested to know what you think about regenerative aquaculture in the freshwater space. Do you think that is a fledgling industry that should be ramped up? And sort of going back to my previous question about the quota, for example, with those endangered species and species at risk, do you think there is a place and space for regenerative aquaculture for the reintroduction of species into these declining populations? And should there be investment in that space?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think don't think I can comment on the investment into that space. I think that's something that we are going to explore a little bit more in terms of the different ways of doing agricultural sort of land use, and what the effects might be on water quality aspects in particular. I think one case study that I haven't shown here that we are currently working on is Lake Okaro, where we are looking at trying to better understand the effects of different land management practices on lake water quality, especially in Lake Okaro, which is still reasonably problematic in terms of its water quality. And one of the farmers in that catchment has recently started implementing some regenerative farming practices. So we're looking at it very closely with modeling tools in particular to understand the actual benefits of that practice on water quality. Probably want to highlight that even implementing a different sort of farm management regime is still a long-term game in terms of the way the lake will respond to that. So it will take years for the lake to respond to those changes. In the meantime, building those artificial reefs might be a good place for us to buy us some time for those species.
Yeah, I totally get the impacts of agriculture, including aquaculture, on that land use on water quality. It's more in terms of species regeneration, like in the marine space, regenerative aquaculture with coral, making coral in a tank and then reintroducing it into a coral reef sort of thing. Is that a new space for saving our lake species is probably more the question, as opposed to what the land use impacts are on the lake of aquaculture and agriculture, because I'm well aware of those.
Yep. I think we're quite lucky in the freshwater space, so we don't have to wait for corals to grow. We can use some pretty simple materials like rocks or other materials that we want to test, wooden debris. There are 3D printing technologies that we can maybe look into just to create more available habitat for those species without having to wait for corals to grow. So yeah, I think if they're going to work, we will see those benefits in a much quicker way. Yeah.
Councillor Winters.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 comments, Dennis, and then a question. And the question, I've been asking it for a long time. Mr. Chairman, on Dennis's report on page 45, the highlight of that number 1 paragraph in terms of NPSFM attributes affecting the natural recurring processes in the Bay of Plenty, I think that's crucial reading for us as councillors and staff going forward in terms of the plan change that this council is going to implement across the Bay of Plenty in terms of DRP. That is crucial reading and understanding for our plan change. I'll leave it at that. The second one is paragraph 2 on page 45, water quality modelling the Ohau Channel Wall. And in that paragraph, Dennis says the analysis show that the wall remains crucial. So when Andy comes back to us before Christmas, Andy, in terms of the repairs to the wall, I want us to be all cognizant that the wall is absolutely crucial for Lake Rotoiti. And so my final question, Mr. Chair, is Dennis, fabulous that you're looking at this funding proposal for the new forecasting tool. I think that's going to be absolutely impressive if you can get it up and running and modelling weather forecasting with the TLI changes. Because, yep, 20 years ago, the weather forecasters said it's going to be cloudy today with a bit of rain, and that was it, that was a bob each way. Now we are down to the hourly weather forecasting. So it'd be great to see that tool. But my question to you, Dennis, is we've been doing this for 20 years. We've done catchment work, we've done engineering work, we're doing sewage schemes. What else is on the horizon that this council needs to pick up, and your research is going to show us what else do we need to do to restore these lakes? Because people ask me the question, how are the lakes going, Kevin? I say good, but they're not great. So what's the next big step change for us in this restoration program?
Big question.
I know, and I'll keep asking you it, Dennis, because while I'm still sitting around this table, I will keep asking it every year. What's new on the horizon?
So there's no new magic bullet that we can use. And I think the comprehensive Lake Rotorua Science Review incorporated all of the new emerging technologies into that review, and there's nothing on the horizon that would give us a quick fix to those problems. So catchment management will remain the absolute crucial part of restoring those lakes. And how far we can get with that, I'm hoping I will have a few more answers for you in maybe next year, if that's okay. Okay.
Could I just add a comment there, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think something that's really important that the university is leading now is the work that Dennis described in Rotoehu. And so that's understanding the drivers of water quality. And so we do things like alum dosing and think that we're achieving a lot by doing that, but it's understanding how significant alum dosing is compared to Cyclone Gabrielle or some other natural event that's occurring within the environment. So from a lake manager's point of view, I'm really excited about getting information from the university about what's changing the water quality or what's driving water quality changes in each of those lakes, and particularly a lake like Rotoehu, which from year to year and even from season to season can fluctuate from very poor water quality to quite good water quality. Just understand what our influence can be on that.
Councillors White, Nees, then Thurston. Councillor White.
You could have. Look, again, thank you for your presentation. When I went through the document, it was quite hard getting through the acronyms of DOP, do, DRIP, and other things. But having said that, I don't think it was much clearer being able to see it. And you get a more sort of a pragmatic vibe about what's happening here. And then you start drawing a line of what can we do, because you mentioned climate change, geothermal, geology in here. All of those are very natural situations. Geology, friable soils and tephra and ash, and geothermal is realistic. We try to draw off for use of energy, but nature is what it is. All of these are natural states. And so the issue for us is really what can we do as humans to reduce the impacts of those natural occurring phenomena, but do it in a way that's actually pragmatic, that actually for us as a council, we can make decisions that are actually, dare I say, local government mantra at the moment, value for money. Where do we put our money in the context of things? So I really think your research you're doing is excellent. The number of PhDs that have been done, again, adding to the research profile here is excellent. But, again, it's that line, just trying to define from the information that you're giving, what is useful information that we can apply to the policies we have that can make a difference in our time and the next generation's time. Because this is an intergenerational movement, obviously. Leave you to comment.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think the way we integrate the research into those review cycles and working closely with regional council staff sort of gives it an element of real world sort of implications and management implications, really. So I'm not quite entirely sure what the direct question was.
I hear the word pragmatic coming through all the time, and sometimes in conversation around this table, and things that we need to focus on in order to maximize the differences we can make, to change what is effectively the diamond in our crown originally. Of course, diamond is I'd rather say bone, but diamond's a derivative of carbon. Right now, it's a big lump of coal in the crown. So what I'm trying to do is just basically get a position where, trying to maximize our position in terms of driving solutions from your research documents, information.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll think about this actually. I think you'll find that a lot of our research themes are aligned with the long-term vision or the intergenerational aspect of managing those lakes. And we only now is really starting to grapple with the climate change impacts as well. So I think in the next couple of years, we'll get a much clearer idea of the things that can be done to mitigate those effects within the sphere of our influence.
Thank you. Councillor Nees.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you so much for an excellent and informative report. And just picking up from the previous comment that you made, I think so much of the work that you're doing is going to be incredibly valuable to us in the future, particularly for the lakes. So I do appreciate that, and getting a report like that is very valuable. I've got one question, and it's pertaining to the Ohau Wall, because we know that we have to replace that. And I seem to remember there was some report from quite a while ago that the University of Waikato thought that cathodic protection for the wall might be something that we should consider, putting anodes on the wall to provide some sort of corrosion protection. Is that an area of study that you could provide further advice on to us as we're considering replacement of that wall or repair of the wall?
So I think, Dennis, that's probably a bit unfair on you.
Yeah, I was going to
Mr. Berea, so that report Councillor Nees is referring to was 2015. The wall was built in 2008. Degradation on a 50-year life cycle of that wall was discovered in the first 8 years, was probably the first 6 years. The University of Waikato did that study. They recommended potentially cathodic protection. Why didn't we do it? That's the simple answer. Question, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good question. It's a comment that comes out regularly from people who have expertise in corrosion in the marine environment. And we've had the University of Waikato report, then another guy, Les Bolton, who was an expert in corrosion, as well as WSP report on and look at the long-term solutions there. There was 2 methods of corrosion prevention investigated. That was anodes that you put on the wall, similar to what you tie onto or bolt onto the engine of a boat.
Yep.
And that's a sacrificial anode that corrodes instead of the metal on the motor of the boat. And then the second method is, instead of doing that, you set up an electrical current which does the same, has the same impact in terms of electron transfer between the wall and the water and prevents corrosion. The trouble with that solution is that at that stage the wall had probably corroded enough to make that solution not viable. And then that solution is used in terms of the electric current through the wall in marine environments where you have a lot more conductivity, and with it in a freshwater environment, the experts weren't sure that it was actually going to work, and the cost for that was pretty high, within the range of $2 million plus. So it wasn't seen as a viable alternative after the work had been done by those experts. I've spoken to a number of other experts since then, including a professor from Auckland University in the area of corrosion, and I'm in the process of talking to another expert that I've been in contact with. And what I find there is generally the comment is you could solve this problem with that sort of protection until you then get down to discuss the specifics with them and show them the reports that have been done. And so far, I'd say the University of Auckland professor that I spoke to basically said, no, you're on the right track in terms of the advice that you've got from WSB. And I'm partway through the conversation with another expert. So it's kind of useful to have those people questioning what we're doing and then finding out whether there's something that we've missed. But so far, we appear to be on the correct track in terms of it wouldn't be a viable alternative right now.
I can't help thinking it might be a useful area of study to do a very small trial on an area of the wall to see if an anode or some anodes might slow the corrosion. But anyway, thank you for that.
It's certainly something I can discuss with Dennis for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lees. Councillor Thurston.
Dennis, thanks for your presentation, and thank you on behalf of the people of Rotorua for all that you're doing and your freshwater science team in this space. But for some of us who've been around a while, I remember David Hamilton had a very small, tight team, but clearly now it's obviously an area of great interest to postgraduate students, the freshwater study and research. Would you like to comment on that? Because clearly is it by design or it's by choice that students are embarking on this course of study and research?
I think freshwater research is a growing area in New Zealand. The focus on freshwater management has grown quite dramatically since David Hamilton was holding this position. The NPSFM and the public-facing issues around water quality has certainly resulted in a huge increase in interest. And also think that I'd like to think that we are advertising exciting research opportunities for students domestically and internationally with support from Regional Council, that there are opportunities to get your hands wet and get stuck into it with some meaningful research that benefits communities. And I would also like to add that the way we interact and engage with the community now, we're going to community meetings, presentations, those sort of things. And students are very, very interested in doing this meaningful, impactful research that benefits communities. So I think we've seen, we sort of the beneficiaries of that momentum. Yeah.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Dennis, a stunning report. Thank you. Excellent. And for somebody that our family have used all the lakes right over to Rotoiti from Kawerau for the last little while anyway. I'm not quite as old as Councillor Thurston, but I say that tongue in cheek, sorry. But one thing that Rotoehu was always a popular lake with us for skiing, particularly in a lot of those little inlets. And I remember sheep grazing right down to the lake. I never had too much problem with the water quality until pine trees were growing onto the place or close to the water. So there's been a big degradation of that water quality over those years. But it was a great skiing lake, great fishing lake, and swimming. Can I just go back to Rotomar now, and one that we use regularly? Last year, you know what happened to Rotomar? The lack of human intervention has had a vast improvement on that lake quality, I feel, because I've used it just recently myself. It's under huge pressure from humans. And Rotoiti ended up with a lot of those people going to Rotoiti from the Eastern Bay to go skiing and fishing and the likes. But that's one thing. Rotomar is under intense pressure, and you only have to go to the car park at the fire station or at the Matahi Strip to see how much pressure it is under in summertime. So I think that's one thing that is really concerning me, and it certainly has. Councillor Winters, we know that some of the issues with jet skis now, the amount of motor operations going on that lake is just far outweighing the poor old lake. It's just under huge pressure. So, but it's just that I've noticed, even though the lake had come up and now it's slowly starting to go down, the water quality seems to be better, but I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about that thing. So I'd just like some comment, please, if you.
Yeah, thanks. I don't think I have a detailed answer for you. I think that's probably an area that we are becoming increasingly interested in, those lakes that have incredibly good water quality, to understand if they're on the right trajectory of their maintaining their water quality. So sorry, I haven't really looked into that in a lot of detail.
And it's just a concern because Lake Rotomar and Lake Tikitapu probably, and Taurua, of course, probably the last bastions of our Rotorua lakes that are really good quality swimming. And it's something that we need to be very, very conscious of. But stunning report. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Last one, Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Dennis. I just had one point of clarification, and that's with regard to your study on Lake Karo. And I was reading there that there was a public belief, it seems, an assertion that with the alum dosing, that was somehow triggering surface algal blooms within a fortnight or so. And that seemed to be a public belief and an observation. What I was trying to clarify from the work that you did, it seemed that you did a monitoring of chlorophyll before and after, and I just want confirmation, was your conclusion was that public belief and assertion was incorrect?
Let me formulate my thoughts. So we utilized the existing data sets, including the monitoring buoy, to understand if that actually occurred, that algae bloom post alum dowsing. We found that was inconclusive. There was an inconsistent algae bloom post alum dowsing. So in some years it did occur, in some years it didn't occur. So we're not dismissing that observation that people have made that live around the lake. There have been post alum algae blooms, but we couldn't connect it directly to that alum dowsing.
So you can't confirm it. It's still uncertain. Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's a direct link between the alum dowsing and the algae bloom. There are other dynamics that cause those algae blooms in the lake.
And it's a coincidence that they occur regularly following alum dowsing.
Based on the data that we had, that's true. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Andy. Just closing comment from me. As Councillor Thurston said previously under Professor Hamilton, Andy, some of those community meetings that we used to have, run with the Jarrah Lake Trust, I thought were invaluable. And I think, Dennis, this sort of presentation to the wider community probably would have a lot of merit. And secondly, despite the consternation about the lake levels in Rotomar, it's very interesting to see the decline in those lake levels. And we know there's no natural or obvious natural exhaust to that lake in terms of water flows. So I think we tend to know a lot about the geological interaction and lake levels, but we probably don't. When you look at it, the rate it's going down, it's pretty impressive. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
See you next time. Thank you. Councillors, that takes us through to the chairperson's report. I'll move that we the adoption of the chairperson's report. Councillor White, second. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Any matters arising from that? No? Right. Do we have to adopt Dennis's report?
No, we don't.
No? Right. Right, one more, councillors. 10.2, navigation safety bylaw. Tony, would you like to come up? I think we will take it as read. There were 4 or 5 councillors who were part of this bylaw. So if you want to make some opening comments, Tony, we'll then revert to the chair of the committee.
Through you, Chair, I just want to acknowledge that everyone's commitment to this project, which I think in the first instance we thought was going to be fairly simple, but has actually been quite challenging. So there've been the commitment of the committee to meet regularly over the last couple of years and come up with some some resolutions around some pretty challenging problems that we've faced has been exceptional. So I will take the paper as read, and I'm happy to take questions and also follow the chair's lead in a summation.
Thank you, Tony. Could I just ask you to expand briefly on, if it's in the resolution, the recommendation that the committee be reconvened at some stage to deal with Huntress Creek and what was the other one?
Sorry, through you, Chair, there's actually three items that came about. I'll explain Hunters Creek first. So Hunters Creek has been a historical issue with the members of the community on both islands, and the longevity, I guess, of the ski lane that has been there for 25 years plus. We had a lot of speakers and a lot of submissions around for and against keeping that ski lane or getting rid of it. The committee could not reach a conclusion because it was quite a balanced argument either way, and felt that given some of the feedback from the members of the community on Matakana Island in particular, that they wanted to develop further the relationship and engagement with the affected parties in that area around their ski lane. The other two issues, which is the extension of the Astrolabe Reef exclusion zone and the prohibition of anchoring in the Tauranga Harbour shipping channel, came about after we'd consulted on a draft bylaws because of particular safety events that happened in both those areas. So the Harbour Master suggested that to the committee that they look at those before the next formal review in 5 years. Because we've now got a few issues that have come to light, it was the committee's commitment to getting those done as soon as possible that they suggested that they are re-established.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Councillor Von Duddleston, you chaired this, and I see relative to Tony's closing comments here that your recommendation is it should be done within the next 12 months?
Yes, we originally resolved to bring it back to full council because we could not come to a satisfactory conclusion on Hunters Creek in particular. But the problem with that, bringing it back to full council, was that full council hadn't heard the process that we'd gone through, which had been substantive, and we didn't feel it was fair on the full council to make it final decisions on that. So the recommendation, we reconvened on the 10th of September, I think it was. So just recently from the 29th of August meeting, and it came up with these new recommendations, which is we felt that if it was left where it was, it would the only thing that could happen would remain till the next review, because of the lack, if you can't get a resolution, then the status quo holds. We wanted to ensure that we got better consultation and community input, and so this was a pragmatic way to try to resolve the rest of the issues, which we have, and but the Hunters Creek in particular needed particular care, and so that was our determination, was to try to give ourselves another 12 months. And you say, well, why 12 months? But if you put yourself on time constraints, you won't get the right answer. So we gave ourselves we haven't put it, I don't think we put it into the resolution as 12 months, but we did. Yeah, okay, we did put it in. Can't remember. It's only a week ago, but the old mind. So there's that issue, and the other issues with the Astrolabe Reef and the Tauranga Harbour shipping. These are international shipping regulations and require going through the process with the Ministry of Transport and Maritime New Zealand. So they're not straightforward, especially with the changes of staff levels in those organisations, to get quick answers from. And so we decided that those two needed more time, as did the infringement. We wanted to increase the infringement fees, and that is one that councils don't have the ability to do without going through the legal process, and I think it might need parliamentary action as well to do that. So that's another issue that wasn't able to be completed within the time frame. So we're just asking to allow that committee to stay live until this process is completed satisfactorily.
Thank you, Councillor von Dillison. I think with a 12-month expectation on this, you can drive it so it'll be done in 12 months. That's the other end of the corollary. Councillor Nees.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight the change for the operative date that you've got in recommendation 4, because what we heard at our last meeting was it's going to take 6 months for the regulations to become gazetted, and that is the schedule of infringement fees. As a result of that, if we made the bylaws operative on the 1st of October, we couldn't action any of our rules. We couldn't, because we wouldn't have an active infringement fee schedule. So it's unfortunate, but this is something that our staff have spent a lot of time trying to talk to Maritime New Zealand about, to see if we can expedite that schedule of fees, but we apparently are unable to, which means we've got to operate the next summer season on the old 2017 bylaws. So my comment is that I see that Minister Brown has highlighted in the cabinet paper on the areas of focus that he's looking at for local government, that review of bylaws and the processes and infringement fee processes are going to be looked at. They're going to be a area of focus for him, and I think this would make a really good case study on how it can be quite difficult to have an effective bylaw process that is timely and able to deliver the outcomes that you require in a timely fashion, because I felt very frustrated when we discovered that after all of this work, we aren't able to get these bylaws operative over the summer season.
Thank you, Councillor Nees. Councillor Winters.
Can I concur with my fellow subcommittee members, Mr. Chairman? We've been 2 years in this process. We're 95% there in terms of the comfort that the subcommittee got in terms of the bylaws for the rest of the Bay of Plenty. We've got this little one around Hunters Creek. We couldn't get the 75% majority. We wanted to bring it, we thought we could bring it back here for you, for the rest of council to decide on, but we thought that was unfair because we've been on this journey for 2 years, and to have one workshop to bring you all up to speed on Hunters Creek and all the issues around there, we thought that was unfair. Hence our request from council colleagues to let us reconvene for another 12 months. Let us do some more consultation with the Hunters Creek water skiers community, and we think we can nail it. But in the meantime, it goes back to the old 17 bylaw that it remains a status quo in the meantime. The extension to Astrolabe Relief and prohibition of anchoring in Tauranga Harbour were issues brought to us that we think we can resolve in the next 12 months. but there's a fourth one out there called the East Coast Shipping. What we're seeing, witnessing, think we have is that, and Te Whānau Apanui are concerned about this in terms of ships going around the top of East Cape, they're cutting the corner. And if one of those ships grinds to a halt on the top of East Cape, we are in deep trouble. And so we want to make sure our processes are in place to ensure that ships keep a wide berth. That one's going to take a bit longer, probably 5 years, John, because it's an international shipping regulation that has to be fully consulted on. But if we can start that as well, we won't get a resolution in 12 months, but we think we can nail these other 3 in 12 months. So an exercise in frustration at times. I think the subcommittee has worked really well together in terms of involving tangata whenua and their concerns, but we couldn't get a majority for Hunters Creek. So let us do our job, reconvene us, and let us have another crack at this. But in terms of the results we've got so far, I'm really pleased with them, along with my council colleagues in terms of Ohiwa Harbour, Tarawera River, Kaituna Cut, all those sorts of things. We've had good consultation with the community to get some of those things over the line. The maritime, now we have to wait for maritime. We only found out about that 2 days ago. And, you know, we were pushing hell for leather to make sure we got these things adopted by 1st of October this year. So it could be a summer, new bylaws for the summer and new booklets and new bylaw booklets printed. But unfortunately, as Jane says, we have to wait until maritime does its bit. Incredibly frustrating that we now sitting on our hands, probably won't be adopted until July next year, Jane, in terms of what we've been doing. But I think the subcommittee worked really well, worked really hard. We've got some good outcomes for our community, and I just want council colleagues to adopt these. I'm happy to, has somebody moved? I'm happy to second these recommendations, but going forward. Thank you, Mr.
John,
Chair.
you wanted to make a comment. Tony.
Sorry, just a couple of points of clarification. The copy of the bylaws that you have as part of your pack, the preliminary provisions currently say the bylaws come into force on the 1st of October 2024, because we are forever hopeful. But now they will be replaced by the sentence in the recommendations.
Yep.
Also, because we are now going to have to wait at least 6 months, by the look of it, to actually enforce any of the 2024 bylaws, the Harbour Master is looking at alternative ways of at least getting some of the big issues action straight away. He is looking at Harbour Master direction to on particularly Tarawera River and Kaituna River, where we were going to instigate 5-knot zones around the swimming areas. So one at Waitangi on the Kaituna River and through the Kawerau Township on the Tarawera. So the Harbour Master consider those actually as current risks, and that's why they were so important in our deliberations. So he is looking at ways in which he can put those into place now, in spite of the fact we can't adopt the full document.
Thank you. John.
Chair, thank you, Chair. Actually, Tony has said what I've said already. So a Harbour Master direction is a very serious tool, if you like, and you don't apply it unless it's a severe risk involved. And we've identified that swimmers are at extreme risk, as we have seen. So hence we took a decision. These two issues should be under a Harbour Master direction. Thank you.
Just to clarify, the international shipping lane designation around East Cape is primarily the mandate of Maritime New Zealand.
That is correct, Chair. We've been pushing it, but apparently a lot of it is involving the IMO. the International Maritime Organization. And that's a very long process because everything is very slow there. But we are looking at means, ways to get a faster result. So just leave it with us and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shirley.
My concern, Chairman, was the other outstanding matters that hasn't clarified, that's Hunters Creek. And I'm just sort of a bit concerned about the process because, yes, we accept that there's conflicting and competing community interests here, but I can't see what's going to change by kicking the can down the track or down the road for another 12 months. And the committee really has just had to adopt a position that they recommend to the full council. And I heard it said that they couldn't get a 75% super majority. Is that required? And really it was just saying they need a super majority for a recommendation to full council. I'm just nervous. The worst decision any organisation can make is a non-decision. And to just kick the can down the road for 12 months on an issue like this, I just don't see the point in it.
Can I respond to that, Mr. Chair? It's not kicking the can down the road in that I think the only genuine, if it went to full council, the only decision that full council could rightly make is to leave the status quo. So that would leave it kicking down the road for 5 years. And that's, we felt that there is potential still to actually get resolution of this. There wasn't considered to be enough satisfactory consultation. But can I just say to both the committee, to the staff, and particularly to our legal counsel, and the amount of work that's gone into this has been really substantive. And as a committee, we really do appreciate the support that we've had on this. These are not easy issues, and we have to get them right. We're dealing with central government as well as local government. It's not straightforward, and I think this is a pragmatic way forward. So I am happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Von Doddleson. Councillor Neese.
Thank you. My apologies, because there was a comment that I was going to make about the maps. We actually didn't see the updated maps at our last meeting. And I've just noticed that on the maps for Lake Rotoahu and Lake Rotomar, we have a speed restriction of the Matutu Arm speed restriction. The shading of that is not the same as the shading on other 5 knot areas. In some of the maps it's yellow, and in this particular, these 2 maps, it's sort of like a purple crosshatch area, which is very similar in colour to the water ski areas and the personal watercraft areas. And I just wonder if you could make an amendment to those 2 maps to standardise the colour for a 5 knot restriction, please.
You, Councillor Neese. So it's been moved by Councillor Von Doddleson, seconded Councillor Winters. Councillor Etty, you did have your hand up. Your question been satisfied? No? Great. No further discussion. All those in favour of the adoptions as outlined in the recommendation, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillors will adjourn till 11:15 for morning tea. Thank you, councillors. We'll reconvene agenda item 10.3. Mr. Haycock.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Through you, Chair, staff have prepared a presentation to supplement the report.
Thank you.
First, to highlight, since both councils, both Regional Council and Tauranga City, last considered this item in August, the landscape has changed. The first thing to make you aware of is that the National Land Transport Fund has been announced, and for public transport services, there is 13% less money from the government than we requested over the next 3 years. That equates to $16 million. That will undoubtedly lead to Regional Council needing to consider a reprioritisation of the transport programme of work. The other thing that's changed is staff have had the opportunity to undertake further analysis on the ferry proposal and increase our understanding of the risks associated with the trial. These pertain broadly to the patronage forecasts, the operational arrangements, and the operating costs. Just to briefly go over and remind you about the proposal. So it's been submitted by Hauraki Express. It's a 24-month trial operated by two 12-metre catamarans with external outboards. The vessels have a capacity of 30 passengers and 15 bicycles, and the proposal sees 40 trips per day between Tauranga City Centre and Salisbury Wharf over at Mount Maunganui. They estimate to operate 330 days a year, allowing for disruptions due to things such as inclement weather. And one of the key benefits of this proposal is the ability to utilise existing shore-based infrastructure. Just to briefly recap the political journey of this proposal, it was first entered into the Tauranga Joint Public Transport Committee in February 2024. Subsequently, in May 2024, Tauranga City Council chose to underwrite 50% of the operational costs of the trial. It then came back to the Joint Public Transport Committee, where it was recommended to the Public Transport Committee. It was then further recommended up to the Regional Council to be considered for funding, as this lies outside of the long-term plan. Regional Council made the decision in August to leave the report lying on the table whilst TCC reconfirmed their support for the trial, which they did. Another thing to make you aware of is that the Hauraki Express requested the inclusion of this activity within the Regional Land Transport Plan. This would be the avenue for the trial to attract subsidy from NZTA. The Regional Transport Committee did deliberate on this matter and ultimately chose not to include the trial in the bid to central government because they thought there was insufficient alignment with regional priorities at that time. Current next steps as they stand. Today, we're seeking in principle support from the Regional Council. This would allow the proposer to progress an application for third-party finance. Tauranga City Council would still need to negotiate commercial terms with the proposer and agree operational arrangements. And then our understanding is that the final plan would be taken back to Tauranga City Council elected members for a final decision. Just something for you to consider. The in-principle support is likely to set community expectations that a trial will commence in some form. To take you through our increased understanding of some of the risks associated with this trial, the first is the forecast level of patronage. So the proposal assumes that boats average 40% capacity across all sailings. That equates to 480 passengers per day and just over 158,000 passengers per year. And the assumption in the proposal is that every passenger pays a fare of $6. An allowance has not been made for concessions or discounts. To give you an understanding of the existing market for especially for public transport between Tauranga CBD and Mount Maunganui, the Bay Bus currently moves around 70,000 patrons per year between those two locations, roughly 80% on weekdays, 20% on weekends, and that equates to 220 trips per weekday. Of those, 1/3 are full fare-paying adults and 2/3 qualify for some sort of concessionary fare, primarily Super Gold or Child. And then we acknowledge that this is slightly outdated, but the 2018 census indicated that there were approximately 300 commuter trips between Tauranga CBD and Mount Maunganui per year. Just to do some benchmarking, we looked at the feasibility study that was completed for Regional Council that went to the Public Transport Committee in 2023. So 158,000 passengers per year broadly compares to the 4 routes operated in Auckland there that carry between 150 and 200,000 passengers per year. You can see that those are operated by vessels of significantly larger scale than what is proposed in this particular trial. I'll now invite my colleague, the Harbour Master, to comment on some of the operational arrangements and the risks associated here.
Chair, the proposed route of the ferry passes through a very, very busy part of the harbour. It goes past the port of Tauranga berths, ship berths. It goes past the marinas. It goes past the vessel works. And you also have a lot of recreational boats, stand-up paddlers, all kinds of craft in that vicinity. So the problem becomes on the speed. If I could illustrate it with a little rough diagram I put up, can you put that up? I'll have to go cross-check to show you better. This area is approximately 200 meters from shore. So that's the 5-knot rule will apply to all of this. So they've got a very narrow strip where they could go faster than 5 knots. That is assuming you don't have any other craft in the area or you don't have a ship operating. I spoke to the Port of Tauranga. They have approximately between 4 to 12 movements of ships in a day. Those movements take from within 30 minutes to 45 minutes for a ship to get out of this area. So what I'm saying is it's very unlikely they'd ever be able to exceed 5 knots. Another picture further down. So this is the container terminal. And this is the log ships. You got the marina, and then you've got all your vessel works. There's a lot of movement of craft in this area. So the rule is within 50 meters, you've got to slow down to 5 knots. So I can't put a real time frame on how long it'll take for the ferry to travel, but I can tell you this will definitely exceed 15 minutes. And I was requested to do a speed uplifting. It is too high risk. I would strongly advise against that. I think you got I made my point, so yeah, thank you.
You don't need me to bring up this one? Okay.
Thank you, John. Shuffling on with the presentation, operating costs. So staff have compared some of the high-level commercials in the proposal against the cost ranges identified by the 2023 feasibility study. So labour costs sit lower than the range identified in our study. I'm sure you're all aware of the national shortage of trained skippers and the challenge of attracting them. So we do identify that as a risk. Fuel costs for operating the vessels do sit at the lower end of the range identified, and maintenance costs sit lower than the range identified. The next risk is fare box recovery. So this goes hand in hand with the review of the demand forecasts. So I think it's probably a fair assumption from staff that revenue is likely to be in the order of potentially 50% less. And also noting that of that remaining revenue, there's a proportion that will likely be offered some sort of a discount or concessionary fare, and the risk that this could further erode the average fare collected per passenger. To surmise some considerations, the Public Transport Committee in November last year resolved to defer any further investigations into ferry services until the development of the 2027 long-term plan and development of the submission to the National Land Transport Programme. And this decision broadly reflected the timeframes associated with the redevelopment of Tauranga CBD. Tauranga CBD, as you're all aware, is undergoing major regeneration, and at a point in time where there is significantly more activity in the CBD, staff recommend that that might be an appropriate time for council to direct staff to reconsider the feasibility of ferries within the harbour environment. And I think it's also worth reflecting that the Hauraki Express proposal is innovative, and it does demonstrate the potential feasibility of delivering high quality ferry services at a lower cost than the conventional ferry offerings that have previously been considered. However, following the NLTF announcement, we note that transport funding is constrained. There is a level of risk that staff have identified with the patronage forecasts, operational arrangements and operating costs. And our high level estimates are that there could be a funding deficit of up to $500,000 per year, so $1 million over the 2-year trial. I think it's also fair to advise council that you should assume minimal to zero fare box recovery coming back to council to offset any potential funding. And we do note that whilst with this proposal, the financial risk does ultimately sit with the operator, we advise that the regional council should consider the implications of the trial not operating as proposed due to financial difficulty. As I've previously mentioned, approving in principle funding is likely to set an expectation with the community that the trial will operate, and you will be setting that expectation prior to due diligence being undertaken by Tauranga City Council. I think there are 5 potential outcomes from that due diligence. Ultimately, commercial terms can't be reached and the trial fails to progress. There's a need to de-scope the trial to deliver it within the budget. Additional funding is required from councils to operate the trial as proposed. The trial commences and financially struggles, or finally that risks can be mitigated and the trial commences successfully. That concludes the presentation from staff, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Oliver. Councillors. Councillor Thompson.
I noticed we've been asked for questions. I don't have a question. I would like to make some comments. Is that appropriate?
It is.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you to colleagues for allowing this to lay on the table so that Tauranga constituent councillors could participate in the decision making. I'm really grateful for that. I also want to acknowledge the passion and the work that has gone into this proposal, particularly from Hauraki Express. I want to also acknowledge and thank staff for all of the work and the analysis that has helped me, at least, to be able to arrive at my point of view today. So genuinely a big thank you for that. At the outset, I want to say that I love the concept. I loved it when I saw it and I have continued to love it. And I think at some time in the future, a proposal such as this should receive support. However, and absolutely regrettably, I don't believe that this is an optimal time for us to be supporting this particular proposal. Firstly, as has been outlined, the new National Land Transport funding allocations have significantly affected our PT operating budgets. We are now going to be operating in constrained financial circumstances for PT services. Some of our existing may need to be descaled, and we will be looking to need to increase revenue. So we are, for the next term of the NLTFP, going to be looking at constrained financial circumstances for our delivery of public transport circumstances. As has been outlined, currently we have green shoots underway in terms of CBD developments. And I believe it would be appropriate that a proposal such as this waits till those green shoots turn to flowers. And I also believe that a proposal such as this would be ultimately a really good proposition and offering when the Hewletts Road, Totara Street upgrade proposal gets funding and construction is underway. At that particular time, I believe a proposal such as this to provide an alternative transport route across the harbour will be a really, really positive offering. I regret that, unfortunately, I believe the risks associated with this, given our constrained financial position, puts me in a position where, despite loving the concept and believing that it has a future somewhere in terms of perhaps the next term of the NLTP, I have arrived at the point where I am unfortunately unable to support this proposal and regional council funding. And I say that with a great deal of regret. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And I'm now going to come to Councillor Von Duddleston. And as councillors know, Councillor Thompson and Von Duddleston have been part of the Joint Public Transport Committee, and their involvement and exposure to this consideration over a number of months has been greater than most of us. So Councillor Von Duddleston.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Both the Public Transport Joint Committee with Tauranga City and the Regional Public Transport Committee did receive the original information on this, and both recommended that they come through to full council, because we don't have delegated authority in either of those committees for the funding. So that's why it comes to full council. The key issue here was that what I totally concur with absolutely everything that Councillor Thompson said, but the only thing that was left out was that the Waka Kotahi NZTA looked at the proposal and said that it did not fit within public transport. They saw it as a tourism venture, and as such would not be party to a funding agreement with it. And that left me as an individual thinking, where are we best to spend our money? What's the best bang for the buck? Recognising that we're not going to get that subsidy from NZTA. And we did a lot of analysis on this, and thank you to staff for the in-depth work that you've done. I think there was never a genuine business case put up for this proposition, which was a shortfalling, but staff did some really good work on it for us. And I think there, as Councillor Thompson said, there will be a time, and I see it as with the Totara Street upgrade, that it could become a public transport initiative. And that's when they do that, the disruption through into town from that the Tote Street Hewletts Road upgrade could make this a really viable proposition. But that NZTA have, or the, is it the government with the National Land Transport Funding have said that that will not happen before 2027. So it's that work is unfunded at the moment. And I think it would be appropriate to revisit this in when that funding is about to come on stream, and then we can look at it in a different light, and maybe the NZTA can be a partner to us, and then it becomes a more viable proposition. But as it stands right now, I see exceptionally high risk in this venture, and it's we don't want any party to fail. And on the projections that I've seen, it looks too high a risk for me as an individual to support. So that's where I stand on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Von Duddleston. Councillor McMillan, Scott, and then Shirley.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Ollie and John. I'm so supportive of this concept, and it sort of embraces our way of working as Toi Moana, which is we embrace innovation and are not afraid of doing things differently. And this Hauraki Express trial comes into that camp, but the real challenge, as has been outlined by everyone, is the National Land Transport Funding. Basically, central government has squeezed us into a position with 13% less money over 3 years, $16 million less to operate a public transport service in the Bay of Plenty region, which has basically left us, I believe, with no choice. And I'm absolutely devastated about that. I want to see Hauraki Express succeed. I think their proposal is fantastic. I think their boat design, the way they've incorporated cyclists and pedestrians, potential park and ride, all of those modes could use that ferry service. And I'm also devastated not to be hand in hand with TCC on this. You know, they've endorsed it, and we've got these constraints, and I believe potentially are unable to follow suit and endorse it, which is a crying shame, because my wish and belief is that we need to be partnering on projects. 100%, as has already been said, this is a not yet. It's not a no, it's a not yet. And as has been outlined with the CBD revitalisation, Hewletts Road, there will come a ripe time where perhaps we can push play on this, and I'm crossing fingers that that day will come soon. And really just to say that I'm looking forward to wider inter-council alignment with Tauranga City Council with this project sometime in the near future, and with other projects. And yeah, I am really grateful to Hauraki Express in this proposal, and yeah, devastated that we have basically had a hand potentially forced for us.
Thanks, Councillor McMillan. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, when you have a proposal put in front of you, you think, well, what's the purpose of this? And so a bit of it's to do with, we've heard about tourism, using our harbour, our natural resources. A bit of it's to do with public transport and replacing buses, and trying to encourage people to use other active transport, travel and commuting options. But then you think, well, what would be the measure of success of that? And that would be the number of people carried, the number of buses taken off the road, perhaps, or private cars taken off the road. For public transport to be effective, it's got to be safe, reliable, fast and comfortable. I'm assuming the ferry would be safe, but as we've heard from the harbour master, the reliability will never be there to do 40 trips a day. It will never be there because you've got the heavy vessel movements, you've got just the normal vessel replacements, you're next to the marina. You'll never be able to get that sort of speed for any purpose on the ferry. So it's never going to be an option. Then you look at the number of passengers proposed, and it just doesn't make sense. You compare what is being transported from Devonport across to the Auckland CBD, and it is roughly comparable for a trip that actually saves time. When you look at this proposal, it will take longer than a bus and be less reliable because you don't know, because you can't schedule around heavy vessel movements, which are much more random. The price, $6 compared to your bus of $2.70 something. People know, there won't be the gold card users using this because there is no public transport subsidy that allows that. So who is going to pay 3 times, at least 2.5 times the alternative price to have a trip across the harbour? The opportunity cost. What would we be using? First of all, there's opportunity cost just for our ratepayers. The targeted rate would have to increase 10% on our Tauranga ratepayers to afford this as a project. What would they use that for? In terms of our own funding, what are the other options available? And we've heard about the Totara Hewletts and the connecting Mount Maunganui, which really must be a higher priority than that. The route, we're assuming that when people catch the bus, that they are going from the Mount to the city or from the city to the Mount. But in fact, the bus drops people off at workplaces all around the industrial area and en route to the CBD. The ferry takes you from A to B. So we're assuming that people are going to get there. There's an extra cost there, perhaps not for us, but for our city partners in terms of park and ride facilities that just don't exist at the moment before we get into marketing. The reputation of council, it's not our role to support private businesses per se, even less so if there is a high risk to our ratepayers of its commercial capability. And I think to be a council which starts to support and pick winners when it's clearly not going to be one, in my view, I think that puts us as a council very much at risk. The setup of the funding from regional council's point of view, it's tantamount to a grant, and we are relying a lot on, we would rely a lot on the other funding partner to come up with commercial details, to commercial agreement that fits our needs. That really, and then when that's before we even get to weather, as in rain and wind and so on. At least in a bus, there's sides to the bus as well, which protects one from the weather elements. So there's not a lot of favour that doesn't even achieve what its success would look like. And so I can't support this. And I frankly, other speakers have said that perhaps one day it might be something, but I fail to see how that's possible given what we've heard from the Harbour Master today, apart from other things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. I concur with the comments of my fellow councillors and won't reiterate those. I would like to really acknowledge and thank Ollie and his team, though. This is one of the most robust, courageous reports I've seen and very succinct with a very clear analysis, an excellent report in my view. And it makes our job easier, and no one does it with delight, and often decisions have to be hard, but the evidence and analysis is overwhelming, which actually makes it an easy decision, even though it might be one hard to make. And I think on that basis, I'm happy to move that we endorse recommendation 1, that is that the report be received, that we endorse recommendation 2C, and that's option 3 of the 3 options, that we do not provide funding support for the Tauranga Harbour Ferry trial. That would make recommendation 3 and 4 redundant, and then we can adopt recommendation 5, which is procedural or an acknowledgement, really. So I'm happy to move that, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Shirley. So in fairness to other councillors, I've got councillor White, Thurston, McDonald.
Kia ora, Mr Chair. Firstly, I'm not in favour of never say never. I don't think we can say never because there's many things that have happened. And so I think it's a matter of time here. I want to applaud our Tauranga councillor colleagues. I'm an observer, obviously, from the Rotorua constituency, but I really feel the passion for the innovation, the passion for the thought. And like I say never. This is something in the wind that, in my view, is inevitable. If you're up to your eyeballs in road transport problems and clogged on the land, then you're obviously going to look to the sea to actually your transport. And for Māori, for example, when you've got the water on your border, that becomes one of your highways. So I know there's difficulties, but never say never. And there's always some solution into the future that can make this possible, but it is just not now. And so I just want to congratulate, our colleagues from Tauranga, because it is hard when your communities are really, really driving strong for this. Beyond TCC, you'll probably have a lot of people out there who really favour this, but not now. And I think it's appropriate, the decisions that they're being drawn and the comments made by our colleagues from Tauranga are solid comments. And I too want to actually congratulate Ollie and the team, because the numbers and the figures and the scenarios you put are complete. So it actually consolidates the view that now is not the time, but never is not never. It has got its time and moment, and maybe it's in the next several years when that might happen, when you need to look for solutions again beyond the land and look to the sea for your favour. Kia ora.
Thank you, councillor White. Councillor Thurston.
Thank you, Chairman. I too want to congratulate my Tauranga and Western Bay colleagues for the rational manner in which they have conducted this debate. As the original mover to get it to lie on the table, the reason that I did that was because I felt there was insufficient members that day for obvious reasons at that meeting from Tauranga and Western Bay. So I wanted to afford them the opportunity to consider the proposal in greater detail and seek further information. I think the proposal is incredibly brave. It's innovative. And as long as I've been on this council, I've been incredibly passionate, as you all know, about trials in whatever form they take, and I'll continue to do so. The landscape has changed. We've heard that from the staff. The National Land Transport Fund is out with a considerable amount of reduced funding. The funding's constrained. Wearing my regional transport committee hat, it did have an insufficient alignment with regional priorities, and just that was shared by others from around the region. But we've had an in-depth analysis from staff and heard further information from the Harbour Master, which we have shared with our TCC colleagues. But I just caution us about putting too much blame towards the government. At the end of the day, the numbers just don't stack up on this, and sadly it's a concept which I will be supporting to be parked. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Thurston. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Look, there's nothing that's been already said by councillors that I disagree with. However, I do have a concern as a governor and a decision maker around this table, and what I see as an impediment in the process that has been taken, and also the lack of due diligence. So, I thank the staff that have done the deep dive. And moving forward, I just hope that we've learned lessons here, because I think what I see as the lack of accountability in the process has now landed us in this position, which now leaves us in an awkward position with TCC, which is a sad thing to be happening, given we're supposed to be having a meet and greet at the end of this meeting. I mean, it's not a good way to start a meet and greet. However, I do want to reiterate, I'm not going to do any deep dive about this because I have questions too, but it's been done. But I still think that the process could have been a lot better than what we're facing now. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Nees, last one.
Oh, thank you. I can't add anything to the comments that have been made. The concerns about the risk of the trial echo my own. So this is one of those times when you're forced to make a very difficult decision where you might want to do something because it ultimately you feel it's the right thing for the city, but prudency means that we're better to say no at this time, and hopefully the process will be initiated in a better way when the timing is right. I just want to reflect that there are going to be people that are very disappointed as a result of this decision, and I am really sorry about that. You will have heard how many of us actually wish we could have done this, but the restriction in our funds and the uncertainty revealed by the due diligence done by our staff has meant that, you know, we have to make a hard decision in this case. So I just hope that we have a really good press release to the public so they can understand that this wasn't something that we do lightly, that we thought long and hard about it. And we feel that ultimately it's the best decision and it's a responsible decision to be made by people around this table. And secondly, to Tauranga City Council, we are working really hard to try and ensure that we work together closely on transport and public transport. And it is a difficult situation when the infrastructure funding is provided by Tauranga City Council, the roads and the bus interchanges, etc., and we provide the service. So I just reiterate my commitment to work as closely as we can with Tauranga City Council to try and ensure that the delivery of our public transport and our transport networks is as seamless as possible, and that we meet the needs of the community going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nees. So the resolution outlined on the board at the back there's been moved by Councillor Shirley. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Campbell. Before I put the resolution, I think it's worth noting that this is one of the few occasions in your agenda where there is not a firm recommendation from staff. So what I'm going to do now, because of the sensitivity in the prior discussion, staff have presented you with the good, bad and the ugly in terms of their interpretation of the data. So I'm going to ask the Chief Executive, what is the staff recommendation in this proposal?
Thank you, Chair. And given the change to the National Land Transport Program and the analysis done by staff, we recommend option 2C, which is what has been moved by Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Fiona. So that aligns with the recommendation that councillors have moved and seconded. Just closing comments. Firstly, can I say that could I thank Councillor Thurston on the 1st of August, you moved this matter lie on the table. And I think the opportunity to have the discussion with our colleagues at TCC has enabled us to work through some of these issues. It's also worth noting that as Monday of this week, the information that was provided to councillors at this forum today was presented to the collective forum of regional councillors and TCC elected members on Monday of this week. And the last comment, colleagues, is I'd also like to endorse the position taken by our colleagues representing the Tauranga constituency. But when it comes to spending public money, whether it's direct in terms of operational activity we do, or it's indirect in terms of the proposal here, which was to essentially underwrite, subsidise or grant in terms of public funding to this, it's a collective responsibility for everybody around the table. So with those comments, we know what the resolution's been moved. Councillor Shirley, seconded Councillor Campbell. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Ollie. Thank you, John. That takes us through to 10.4. Councillors, 10.4, this should be a procedural matter. You were given previous notice that there was an error in the rating schedules as provided and endorsed at a previous meeting. Maren.
Atamaria, Chair and Councillors. So as indicated by the Chair, this report provides an update to councillors on your decision you made at your August meeting to abide by the requirements of the Local Government Rating Act to issue a public notification of the intent to reset the minor rivers and drainage rates. That process is now complete, and the report is essentially seeking council's approval of resetting the rates as set out in the recommendations in the report.
Councillor McMillan.
Happy to approve.
Moved. Thank you. Second. Councillor Von Duddleston. Any further questions?
Yeah,
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, just a question, please. Those people that have been on direct debit, do they get a credit or they get money back or what? There's a lot of grumpy people out there that asking us those questions. We just need to know what to tell them. That's all.
So for those on direct debit, adjustments will be made where required. If they haven't paid the full rates, then the total rates that they would be paying for this year would be based on the revised rates set at this meeting.
Right, thank you, councillors. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Maren. 10.5, Waihi Estuary Catchment Freshwater Improvement Project. Welcome, Pim and Claire.
Kia ora, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this paper. So we'll split the presentation and hopefully consideration of the recommendations into two parts. So Land Management Officer Claire McCorkindale will speak to the Cutwater Road wetland section, and then I'll speak to the MFE variation section.
Hello again. It's been a little while. I've been away for 6 months on leave, and so nice to be back on board and presenting where we have got to and what the team has done while I've been away. And a special welcome to Kura and Rowana from our Te Wahapu team who are joining us in the back. So as we're all aware, the Waihi Estuary is in dire need of as much help as we can give it, and needs some significant reductions across the four main contaminants, and is a really big reason behind the Cutwater Road project and what we're trying to do. When I last presented back in November, this was the design concept that was presented to you with the 20-hectare coastal salt marsh portion and then the 10-hectare treatment wetland section. And from the feedback and the feasibility design and workshopping that has happened, it was determined that that was not a feasible option based on the water levels that would be diverted for the coastal wetland, and it was simply going to be too deep. Too much fill was going to be required to get up to the suitable elevation range for the salt marsh species. And then also for the 10-hectare constructed treatment wetland portion, the cost of that was too high. And so we went back to the drawing board, and while I was away, the team did some awesome work coming up with the new design concept, which I believe has already been shared and talked through, but I can go through the key sections again, just to update where things are at now. So we've changed from a 10-hectare treatment wetland into a 27-hectare, we're calling it freshwater wetland with treatment benefits. And so what we've done is we've taken the key design principles from the NIWA guidelines that were used for the Baygold and Hickson wetland projects, but we've taken the learnings of where we could make cost efficiency savings, particularly around the planting densities and as well as the earthworks cut and fill volumes, which is where your biggest cost tends to come in. And so we will still have significant water quality improvements that will be delivered through this, but it's just a different approach from the more Rolls Royce of what the Baygold and Hickson wetland projects were. And also because now this area is 27 hectares, it is a 4.3% size of the contributing catchment, which is much bigger than the 1.6% of the original 10 hectare proposal. So larger area, more ability to treat the water that is incoming. There's still similar design principles with the need for the pump station at the inlet. And then there's also some of the cultural aspects that are really integral and important. So we've got the remnant channels, so the historic exit point of the Pongakawa will still be maintained, and also another section as well. And as well as incorporating a Pāharakeke, which was of significance historically. Another part that was also identified as being significant was having some form of connection of the Pongakawa into the wetland. And so as part of the design in the southwestern corner, a culvert will be installed, which will allow in potential droughts or summer dry periods to divert some water in case that the wetland is needing some extra flow. So that will also be incorporated into the design. In terms of the total coastal wetland, that will be 3 hectares on the other side of Cutwater Road. And so this was the highest elevation part of the site anyway. And so a bund will be put around the edge, and then a culvert will be connected. And so the hope for this, because it's already within that suitable range, is that that will naturally revegetate, and then we can also plant as necessary to help. So quite different from what we originally proposed, but we believe that this is a much better solution, and it still covers off all of the key interests of the stakeholders, and has been endorsed and supported by the Drainage Society, Western Bay Plenty District Council, and of course our Te Wahapu partners have been integral in coming up with this design. And then the all-important cost estimates. So as part of this, one of the big cost items is around the power lines. And so Powerco did an assessment of the poles, because they're existing, they run through the wetland site. And they said that because of the porosity of the base of the power lines, that we couldn't actually introduce any more water into this area. And so they need to be moved. And so our proposal is to underground in the existing Cutwater Road to the new pump, and then to the old pump, which will make maintenance in the long term a lot easier without having power lines running through the middle of the site. And the 350,000 is based on the Powerco's indicative cost estimate for what they think that will cost. In terms of the new pump station, 2 pumps are required, and the costings of those are $100,000 per pump, and the type has been run by the Drainage Society, and they will be McEwen's pumps, because that is what they use in their existing network, and they know how to maintain and operate those. And then the next costing is around the actual installation of the shed, and then the telemetry information to make sure that all the pump stations talk to each other and are triggered at the right time. In terms of the earthworks, as the other big ticket item, the costings for this have been prepared by our Rivers and Drainage team based on recent wetland projects and quotes that they've had come in for certain aspects. And so we're pretty comfortable with that as an estimate for conducting the earthworks. And then there's a separate line item around the drain enhancements. So there's some clearing and widening work of the drains that are upstream that will end up flowing into the wetland, and those will be completed by the Drainage Society, because they obviously have a significant understanding of how all of those drains, etc., work. So that will help to make sure that we can optimize the function of the proposed wetland. And then the last item is, of course, some plants to go in, especially with a focus on the shallow vegetated zones in the treatment wetland itself. And so this budget falls within the CapEx that has already been allocated for this financial year. And then in terms of the next steps from here would be to go through the consenting process for all the relevant bodies, including ourselves, Heritage New Zealand, DOC, Powerco, etc., procurement, and with the aim of being able to start construction November this year, which is ambitious but is still possible.
Thank you, Claire. Pretty well, very well set out paper. Part 2, Pam.
Let's ask a question on.
We'll wait till we get through the part 2 because they're all interrelated.
Okay, I thought we were going to stop and do the resolution.
Oh, sorry, we were. Yeah, you wanted a resolution on stage 1 and then stage 2. Questions to Claire. Kat McMillan.
Thank you, Claire. Just a question around PowerCo. Have they been approached for potential grant? Because I know they do give out and support community organisations and things. I'm just wondering, would they chip in at all to that 350k, and have they been asked?
They certainly haven't indicated that they would do that, but I guess they haven't specifically been asked, unless Pim knows of something on that front.
And I just think it's such a different concept to it being an agricultural, productivity sort of thing where you need to move power lines because it's a commercial enterprise. This is, for the good of the Baywide region, which I could see PowerCo potentially getting behind, and particularly because it's in kind as opposed to actual dollars, maybe it's worth approaching them.
Yeah, definitely ask those questions. Thank you.
Councillor Neese.
Thank you for that. I was a bit confused when I first heard about this because I had thought that we were going to proceed with a 10 hectare treatment wetland, but now it all comes back to me, so it makes a lot of sense, and I do support it. I note that there is a risk as a result of climate change that as the sea level rises, it may not work as well in the future as it does now, but I think it's well worth going ahead with it and trying it, because it'll give us an assessment about what the impact of climate change might be on our other existing wetlands along the coast. So the only question that I've got is, you note that the costs can be sourced from existing coastment catchment activity budgets. So is that the budgets that have been allocated for this project, or is it from other parts of the budget? And if so, which things are not going to be delivered if you're reallocating the budgets from that into this project?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in the coastal catchments activity, we have a project called Focus Catchment Capital Projects, and this was the biggest project in year 1 of the LTP, which we had set aside 1.6 million out of the 2.1 total. So I'm happy that we've managed to get the schedule of quantities and prices. They are estimates, obviously, but they're at the stage, including a contingency and some funds for MSQA, are within the amount allocated in the LTP for the project.
Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is really an extension of Councillor McMillan, because I had the same parallel thoughts that this is a public good project, a very important one and potentially quite high profile. And I would have thought that PowerCo could have well been interested in contributing on that basis. But parallel to that question is, are we, given that PowerCo's, the cost of moving the power lines is 20% of the total project, given that, are we certain, have we checked the veracity of their assertion that the porosity problem with their poles, for example, could have they just sealed around each pole and you wouldn't have incurred this cost? So, the temptation would be, here's public monies, we'll get our power lines moved at no cost to us, which is really an extension of Councillor McMillan's point that perhaps they could be contributing. And from what you said, we actually haven't approached them or dig a bit deeper in terms of them being part of this community project.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have looked at different options, treating the base of the power lines or the power poles, replacing the power poles in situ or undergrounding them. And the undergrounding cost was a few tens of thousands higher than the in situ treatment option. But it was both PowerCo and the collective team's preference to remove them from crossing the wetland if that were sort of within cooey of the costs of treating the the poles themselves. We will take on board Councillor McMillan's suggestion and approach Powerco either for a reduction in cost or a contribution towards those costs. I would also make the point that the undergrounding itself isn't all of the 350. That's nearly half of it. But the other costs associated with the connections to the new pump station and things like that are the balance. And I would say that the 350 is probably on the high side of the total costs encapsulated in that line item.
Thank you. Councillor Winters, then Von Duddleston.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions. Pim, I'm trying to understand, looking at this, the 2 pumps, the need for the 2 pumps. So you're pumping in at the new one. So if you're pumping in, why do you need one at the bottom to pump out? Because can't you just allow gravity for it to flow out the other side?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we've tested that option and we will have a gravity outlet. If you bring the map back up at the northeastern corner, so connecting the treatment wetland to the Pukahina Canal. However, because of the water levels in the wetland and the water levels in the downstream environment, the fact that the land is relatively low, we will only be able to get about 1/6 of the discharge volume from the treatment wetland via gravity. The balance will be via pumping. I'd also note that the 2-pump solution does make it more climate resilient, bizarrely enough, because it means that even if the downstream water level rises, the treatment wetland can continue to function.
Okay. Second question, Mr. Chairman. We brought this land as part of a sale of a farm. Have we subdivided? Do we have ownership, and have we passed on the balance to the other farm owner? Is that deal done and dusted?
Yes.
We haven't received the $3 million back yet, but that is about 2 weeks away. It has taken some time.
But sale and purchase documents have been signed?
Yes, they were signed and executed prior to the transaction on the 1st of June 23. It's just taken a wee while to go through the various processes with Western Bay and Linds, et cetera, to get all of the adjustments carried out.
Councillor Duddleston.
Yeah, just a clarification, a much smaller amount, but Powerco has just funded the Koperere Rua Valley Rotary Centennial Trust for planting. So they're contributing towards that, and that funding came through very quickly. To be honest, it was $5,000, so it's not the sort of level that we're talking here. But they are keen to help with planting in heritage sites.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor White.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Mihana ki au koutou, pia ana ki a kura rawa ko Rowana. Moto mahi pai I te taha wahupu waihi. I rungi te mahi ngātahi kei Wanganui toi moana me ngā iwi. Ora kei te miha te ki au koutou. Mr. Chair, I mean, obviously I'm very passionate about this one as much as people are passionate about the ferry as well. But this one has got its time and it's already happening. And I just wanted to make that point that we've had 3 ministers of the Crown visit. And to your point, Councillor Shirley, it's got high profile right now. It definitely has. And with MFE, have been using it in many ways to sort of send some benchmarks about investment in green projects. And this one is a case study that's been looked at from a hypothetical example of how investments could happen in this type of space. Importantly, though, Mr. Chair, is the fact that iwi have been leading this out, but it has been very inclusive of our farming communities, of our draining communities, of Nature Conservancy internationally, of researchers from all walks of life. And of course, Professor Kura Paul Burke here has been able to pull in those researchers into this space. And Rowana has been very excellent at operating the strategic aspects of this particular space. And with the help of, in the partnership with Regional Council, this has blossomed as what partnership can look like, and not divisive, but inclusive of all those parts of community. So a number of councillors have been on site and witnessed the cohesiveness amongst those participants, which is exciting. And this government at the moment, having given $1.9 million more recently to this, on top of the $2.9 million, It hasn't been easy to extract that type of money out of the government at the moment. But having three ministers on site there obviously did convince them that this was the one to actually support. So I'm doing a bit of a PR here in this particular situation, as I would, because it's an exciting project. It really is. And to coin your phrase, again, Councillor Shirley, it's got a high profile. So something at the moment to be proud of, and I'm just wanted to say those words. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor White. And also, could I acknowledge Professor Kura Paul Burke and Rowana Bennett? As you know, this is only stage one of the resolutions we're dealing here with today, but I'll give you the opportunity to speak if you so wish in terms of this proposal. And as Councillor Nees has been told, stage one here, while Pim wanted me to handle it separately, is stage one is already provided for in terms of budget for year one of the LTP. The second part isn't. Kura or Rowana?
Kia ora tātou. This project is a tangible example of what successful co-developed collaboration looks like in practice. Our combined Toi Moana Regional Council and iwi, Mātauranga Māori and mainstream science methods, coupled with our respectful, reciprocal and equitable relationships as partners, is not only pragmatically successful, but they are also replicatable. In terms of high profiles, I will be travelling to the top of the south in a couple of weeks to work with the council and iwi partners there to discuss establishing a similar type project based on this project. So congratulations. Congratulations to all of us because we are leading and others are following. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Rowana.
Kia ora koutou. I have presented in our iwi forums on this project, and one of the comments that I've made, and I appreciate the opportunity to repeat it in this forum, is that engagement between iwi and councils don't always go smoothly. And I just want to say that the way that we have engaged on this project could become a model in terms of engagement on important kaupapa to everybody. So tēnā rā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Rowana. So councillors, can I suggest that we have a motion that 1 through to 3, and then I'll come back to 4, 5 and 6. Move Councillor McDonald, second Councillor Winters. No further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carry. Thank you. Pim.
Thank you. I don't know if I'll be as eloquent as Claire, but I'll give it a go. So this second part is about the MFE Freshwater Improvement Fund and a proposed variation. So
can we bring up that map, Pim, or the councillors have got it anyway? It's on page 90. That's the Pemmant Ferrari Canal one.
Yep, I had one slide before that if you want it, otherwise I can skip it if you like. So just a brief reminder that this initial bid was put to MFE by Waikokupu. That was turned down by MFE and they referred it back to council and other partners in the catchment, which is when Councillor White and the iwi leaders from the 5 iwi formed Te Wahapu o Waihi, and together we designed a bid that we thought would achieve a whole lot of outcomes that were desirable, both from the iwi collective's vision and from the regional council's community outcomes and specific sort of outcomes required in that catchment. So that grant was for $2.9 million from MFE over 3.5 years, from the end of 2022 until June 26, with 4 work streams. There are lots and lots of deliverables in that, but a couple of the key ones are 20 hectares of new wetland, which Claire's just talked about and you have just kindly approved the construction of. There's also 32 new co-funded EPs, and we've signed up, I think, 17 so far out of the 32. So we're on track with all of that stuff. And that map on the right just shows you an example of part of that Waihi Estuary catchment landscape with the protection areas on some of the farms, around the water bodies feeding into the estuary. So the short version is there's a lot of work happening. Coming specifically to the proposed variation. So some of you were present when Minister Andrew Hoggard visited, and he's now the Associate Minister for the Environment and responsible for the Jobs for Nature funding. He indicated after visiting this kaupapa to his staff that there were some savings from a range of other Jobs for Nature projects that had collectively underspent by a small margin, and that amount came to 1.92 million. And he said to his team, if you can negotiate some additional wetland outcomes with this group and the regional council, I'd be happy to approve that. What we've done is we have, what's that, sorry? So on the map, you'll see the middle green polygon is the Cutwater Road 30 hectare site that we already own together, and Claire's just talked you through that in detail. The two projects which we propose carrying out, if this variation is approved, is 9.5 hectares on Scott and Lisa Pammons farm just to the west. That's between the Pongakawa and the Whārere awa. And there's 9.5 hectares there. That would require a land purchase to carry that out. But you know, it's not confidential. They are happy. We have terms negotiated that are acceptable to them, to MFE and to ourselves if it's approved. And then on the northeastern side, Alec and Vereen Buchanan have indicated a willingness to create up to 24 hectares of wetland on their farm without any need for the council or the iwi to purchase. So that land would be retired voluntarily, and the wetland there would take place via an EP. So in order to meet MFE's criterion of no more than 42% of total project costs through their freshwater improvement fund, the co-funding commitment we need to find is around about 2.1. Now, I've proposed bringing forward 700,000 capex from year 3, 700,000 from year 4, and 700,000 from year 5 of the LTP into years 1 and 2. So putting 500 into year 1 and 1.6 into year 2, which would allow us to do the work without affecting the overall capex budget over the 10 years of the LTP. But there are some interest costs associated with drawing down those loans earlier than anticipated. However, I'd note that the interest costs will be saved at the end of the loan. So effectively, we won't be paying interest for 5 years at the end of the 20-year loan. We're bringing some of those costs forward and therefore into the LTP. Here is a breakdown of those proposed costs. So if I can talk you through this briefly, that top line shows you the coastal catchment's total capital budget in the LTP. The next line shows the proposed budget movement. So you'll see in year 1 a proposed movement of $1 million, which is 500,000 from the MFE variation and 500,000 brought forward from year 3. And then in year 2, we're proposing an increase of 3.02 million, which is made up of the balance of the MFE money, 1.42, and the balance of the brought forward monies from years 3, 4, and 5 in the LTP of 1.6. So if you look at the bottom row now, you'll see the impact on borrowing costs. It means that we'll be paying $18,000 more in interest this year, and then 93, 128, 77, and 20 something in the following years before it meets the borrowing costs specified in the LTP. So the next steps, subject to obviously your decisions at this meeting, are to execute the MFE variation. We have agreement on all of the terms there with MFE now. Negotiate purchase of the Pammon land and access to the Buchanan land, co-design and consent the Pammon and Buchanan wetlands, amend the agreements with the Waihi District Drainage Society and the District Council as the operator of that drainage scheme, and then procure and construct before June 26, when the MFE funding expires. So it's not like this money will be available forever. It's only available until June 2026. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pim. Questions, councillors? Oh,
I'd like
Be
to
quick.
move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Winters?
Do you envisage pumping into those two additional, pumping in and out again? We're not going to see any more power lines or underground powering systems?
I envisage pumping into the Pamment wetland and using an existing pump to pump out, so similar to the Cutwater Road. In terms of the Buchanan wetland, there are options there that would involve pumping or not. And that's partly because there are portions of that property that are trying to become salt marsh already due to saline intrusion coming underneath Pukahina Spit. And there may or may not be benefits in adding pumping to that. But there are other parts of the 24 hectares on the Buchanan land that, you know, if we wanted to achieve a similar result in terms of cleaning up the discharge quality from those pump stations, then we'd be looking at a similar design to Cutwater Road again.
So are you looking to incorporate that third pump station into Pamment land as part of that deal with Powerco? Or do it all at once? That's what I'm saying. If we
at this stage, the power lines do not cross the Pamment wetland area, so we wouldn't have a similar issue there, but we would have to obviously connect to the new pump station to feed into the Pamment wetland. I think it's fair to say that we haven't done all the design work for the Pamment and Buchanan wetlands because we haven't known for sure that we've got the funding to go ahead. So if you say yes today, then we'll do that work.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor McMillan. Oh, sorry, Councillor Shirley, you had a question.
I'm happy to second it, but in second it, I have a question too. So with the wind up of the Jobs for Nature program, and we've got this vestige or remnant block of money that Minister Hoggard's keen to get rid of, putting it bluntly, are we getting the lion's share of that? And I just want to confirm it's a take it or use it or lose it. It's an offer.
So my understanding, Mr. Chair, is that this 1.92 million is a mop-up, if you like, of savings from underspends across 26 or 27 other Jobs for Nature projects, and it's been offered to us. If I'm not sure what happens to it if we don't take it, probably goes back to Minister Willis or something like that.
Right, councillors, so we're dealing with part 2, which is 4, 5 and 6. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Right, thank you, Claire. Before you shoot the coop, Pim, councillors, I'm at liberty to tell you that Pim Demonchi is leaving us. He is essentially leaving us for a period of 12 months, so he tells us. It's not a sabbatical. He wishes to take his family down to Christchurch. He will take leave without pay. And as you would expect of high-performing people, he's secured a position with Environment Canterbury. So could I thank you on behalf of all the councillors, Pim, for the work you've done, and wish you well in terms of your 12 months at Canterbury. Don't forget to come back. And just so you know, replacing Pim will be Charles Harley, who's currently chair of Eastern Catchments. Yeah, he'll be taking Pim's role. Okay, thank you, ladies. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Pim.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, councillors, 10.6 Ford Road Pump Station, Mr. Townsend. Theo.
Kia ora koutou, councillors. I think we've put together a reasonably comprehensive report, so I'll take it as read, but we do have a presentation just to highlight a few items. I believe everyone would know Kathy Theolarden, who's the project manager and the team leader of environmental engineering based here in Tauranga. She will help me as she can, but she's a bit snuffed up, so you'll have to put up with me. And if I say anything wrong, she'll elbow me in the ribs. So. I didn't practice this one. Okay. In terms of the project, just a very brief background. There's a pump station, Ford Road pump station, which has got a number of safety issues, proximity to the road. The floor of it is a bit bouncy. The pumps themselves are well past their economic life. We've just been keeping it going, and I'm sure you're all aware that it currently discharges right next to the gates into the Makatu estuary. And of course, the concern is that you're pumping effectively dirty water, which goes into the top end of the estuary, which is not so good for estuary health. So we were looking at a number of different options to replace. I won't go into the detail because, as I said, there's a lot of detail in the report itself. Essentially, we need to relocate it. So we went through all sorts of different options, and the option that we brought to council in June 2021 was to relocate the Ford Road pump station to right next to the Diagonal drain pump station. And in order to do that, we had to do some hydraulic changes in the internal drain and Cruikshanks drain, as on the screen there, where we had to do some widening. Obviously build the pump station itself in stage 2, and then stage 3, which is to decommission the existing Ford Road pump station. We did have that stage 3 immediately after stage 2, but there was quite a bit of conjecture around this particular proposal around the hydraulics, and we've agreed to delay that stage 3 to, I think, about year 7 or year 8 in the long-term plan, just to basically prove that what our concept is going to work. Just some details around that widening of the internal and Cruikshanks drain. We're using best practice, so with that cross-section you've got there. So instead of having a riparian strip of 1 to 2 metres, we've got 5 metres on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we've got more planting, and then shading for fish habitat. And then in order to do that, we had to relocate a farm track. So just a few photos there for what it looks like now. So the drain widening works is complete, the planting's complete. And with us widening the drains, there's 3 bridge crossings, or 3 crossings, which of course had to be upgraded as well. So 2 of them have been complete, and the other one's due the end of this month, I believe. Just wanted to, on the right-hand side of that slide, the original budget allocation that we presented in 2021 was for 1.3 million. We've adjusted that for inflation, but those costs were based on the fact that we'd get our rivers and drainage staff to do the drain widening. When they came to do the work, they were unavailable, so we've had to get a contractor in, and hence the increase in costs. To stage 2 with the pump station works, and we were looking at 2 different options for the pump station, or the pumps themselves, sorry. So the axial flow pump and an Archimedes screw pump. For those who don't know, the axial flow is a big bell mouth which sucks up the water and then discharges it, and then the Archimedes screw is a lot longer one, slower moving. So what we did was we had a look at the costs for those, and then we also looked at the NPV costs, so the net present value costs, to basically compare the 2 over the lifetime of those pumps. Now, the analysis that we've done, and it's apples versus apples. So we've said for the axial flow pump, the design life is 25 years. And for the Archimedes screw, it's 75 years. So in that calculation, obviously, there's 3 axial flow pumps that are to be replaced. Now, another way of doing it is actually looking at refurbishing costs. So you could go through and say, at the end of 25 years, you could come in and repurpose the bell mouth, so sandblast it, paint it, relook at all of the electricals, relook at the motor themselves, and basically extend that life out. But if you're going to do that for the axial flow pumps, you've got to do that for the Archimedes screw pump as well. And through my 30 years of doing NPV calculations, the ratio will stay the same. So appreciate, yes, you can extend the life of an axial flow pump, but for the purposes of comparing apples with apples, we've used the replacement at 25 years.
Question, Mr. Chair, that should be Ks, not Ms, and that should it not? It should be 10.35 million or 10,335 thousands, not millions.
Well spotted.
Thank you.
The other items at the bottom there is we had requests from our advisory group to look at a permanent generator, so diesel generator as a backup. And we assessed that, and it was additional 3.5 million. We've gone back to them and said that we don't think that's appropriate. We can bring in, if we have a power shortage, we can bring in a standby generator. And so part of the design is to have a socket essentially there to do that. And that's consistent with what they do in the Waikato, where they've got three pumps there that we were sort of modelling against, and also in Southland. The other one there at the bottom is an automated weed clearing system. And again, 300K. Yeah, we sort of determined that that wasn't really viable because we were unsure, I guess, on how reliable it would be. I'll pause there and ask for any questions on stage 2.
Shirley.
Just to expand on that, we had quite a discussion on this at the Kaituna Advisory Group. But the other key factor which hasn't been stated is that the axial flow pumps chop up the tuna and the Archimedes doesn't. Oh, you're still going to cover that? Yeah. It's just, will be increasingly a significant factor. Yeah.
I'll move on quickly then.
So just before you do, I take an interest in this. I'll continue to debate with you the 25-year life cycle of an axial flow pump. History proves, probably support my view, but I mean, these axial flow pumps have a much greater life cycle than 25 years. You're right. If you have to do some maintenance, electrical is common to both. And the only issue with an axial flow pump is the cutlass bearing at the bottom. And as long as you don't run it dry, it's pretty good. But anyway, the issue is, and as we all know, the servicing in terms of cleaning the screens, which is all done manually currently, doesn't matter whether it's Rangitoki Plains or here, is not a small job. And if you've got 4 pumps operating, or 3 pumps operating at once, the inflow of weeds into those screens will be substantial. So I'd encourage you to think about and get someone to design an automated screen cleaner. It wouldn't be that hard, I wouldn't think.
We'll take that on board. But we may have to come back to you for some more money in the future. So
yeah, but it's a serious point, because currently in the Makatu flood pump further down the road, I mean, the landowners go down there, or the scheme beneficiaries go down there and clean it. Every 2 hours? These people go down there manually night and day and clean it. I mean, it's... Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Thank you. Moving on to the Fish Passage discussion. So we've been partnering with many of the regional councils across New Zealand with Waikato on the Pathways to Sea program, where they're trialling different pumps and different pump impellers with the view to not munch up the tuna and other fish. So there was a trial with the Archimedes screw pump and axial flow pumps last year, and there's a few pictures there which sort of demonstrate a scoring system they've used, where you work your way through a tuna which is undamaged through to various stages of bruising, and then through to mortality as well. And then it's summarised. Where's it gone? with the various results. And what the results show is that 100% of the tuna survived passing through the Archimedes screw. Two comparisons with the axial flow pump. So the McEwen's axial flow was pretty poor. And then the Bedford pump with the fish friendly had less mortality, but still had a range of issues. Happy, Councillor Shirley, for your comments now, if you like. Okay, so we looked at the alternatives to fish passage fish passage through the pump for the axial flow pumps, and that's basically the catch and carry, which is quite an elaborate method which had to be undertaken during the night and so forth, and obviously less than desirable. At this stage, fish passage is guidance, but given the life of the pump, we sort of felt that legislation may change, and so we really should be designing for the future. So, our recommendation is to go with the Archimedes screw pump. That's been endorsed by the Kaituna Advisory Group as well. And just there's a few steps there which I won't dwell on too much, except for the third bullet point. So it's basically 12 months to construct, 3 months for delivery. And we just got an email this morning saying that construct can be reduced to 8 months because an order from the UK hasn't been fulfilled. So, Archimedes, correct? Yeah. Okay. Stage 3, which I won't dwell on too much, is as I said, that's out at year 7 or year 8, and we basically talked about that one. And then in terms of the financial summary, which I believe you've got in the paper as well, you can see that as we move from the second column, which is the budget that we presented in June 2021, through to the inflation adjusted in the middle column, and then through to the updated costs with those different options. And you'll see that the difference between the axial flow and the Archimedes is about 1.4 million. But of course has the benefit of the fish passage. So also just alerting you to, although I think you're aware that in terms of central government grants that we've received before the deluge, the amount attributed to the Ford Road pump station is 5.8 million. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mark. Questions, Councillor Thompson?
Nothing to do with this, because I can see some of my colleagues, they're right into this, but I confess it's a bit of a brain tease for me. But my question is this, Mark, from a strategic point of view and looking over the longer term, what are the key challenges facing our river schemes?
Affordability is the number one, and hence, and this is of course right across New Zealand, and hence why we've been working with central government on creating a funding stream to, to subsidise the schemes. I'm sure you're all aware that when the schemes were first created in the 70s and through to the 80s, there was a 75% subsidy. That of course was removed with the amalgamation in 1989. And we've been working pretty hard to get the central government back to the table and have a constant stream, because we can't keep up, and other regions can't keep up with the demands of climate change and everything else that's going on.
So sorry to drag this out, but so what is likely to happen in, say, the next 10-year horizon in terms of river scheme sustainability?
You're going to have a workshop on, like a full comprehensive workshop on that very topic?
Clearly, this is an area that you are focused on with your advisory groups, but it's fair to say your long-term plans and the consultation you do on those in terms of the levels of service that are affordable to your communities is a key focus of each and every long-term plan over the next 10 years.
So in 3 years' time, we can expect this to be a key issue.
Absolutely, as it normally is in your long-term plan.
But the only comment I would make is that for those of us not on the advisory committees, and I think your one went quite a while the other day, it's hard to unless you read the minutes, to sort of keep up to speed with what's being discussed and what the issues are coming out. And I don't know, Kevin, whether that needs to, there needs to be a summary report.
And I
coming to
think
you.
that's part of the next ops and monitoring
Oh, there you go.
project of work, is to have better contact with the 4 advisory groups that we have to report back to ops and monitoring on a bit of a comprehensive report, as opposed to just receiving the minutes. And I think Chris Ingle's going to action that, Fiona. So yeah,
I think, Councillor Thompson, you're right to raise it. I mean, I would have had more calls in the last 6 months from beneficiaries within these river schemes, drainage schemes, where the rates that they are paying are between $100,000 and $150,000 a year. And they themselves are saying, where is the end point here? You know, and you lay on top of that other regulatory regimes that may impact their operations even further. And I've said to Kevin, as chair of the advisory groups, and Malcolm, you know, we need to get our head around this, because this is big money, really big money. Don't have the solution for it, but Kevin. Sorry, Councillor Winters.
It's all right. We saw yesterday, Mark, with Rangataiki, the debt is about 50 million. I couldn't quite pick out in the capitals the debt of this scheme going forward, including the Crown funding grant. If we approve this today, what will be the debt on this scheme if going forward? Because I couldn't find it. No, I couldn't find it anyway. Can we find that out, Mr. Chairman? Because I think it comes back to Paula's question of these viabilities of these schemes going forward. We've got to have a serious discussion about the debt that's being accumulated in these flood protection schemes, and what are we going to do about it? Because when you're sitting at 50 million for Rangataiki, and yes, we've done a lot of work down there and we can see the end point, but it's probably not going to be the end point for this one, Rangataiki, and the other 2 as well. Because one of the questions yesterday from one of the concerned farmers, have we factored in climate change? And I think we have. I think he hadn't quite read the tea leaves of coming out of what we were doing. But, you know, this is big money and it's not going away, and we've got to get our heads around it. This is core business. And I'm worried too, Mr. Chairman, the debt levels we are imposing on these communities is right up there.
Thank you. Right, let's try and keep to the agenda. Have you finished? You finished. Any further questions, councillors?
Happy to move, Mr. Chairman, the resolution for this Ford Road pump station.
Yep. Second, Councillor White. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. 10.7, procurement plan.
So, yeah, I'll just take the report as read and open for questions.
Gee, we know how to spend money, don't we? Okay, no further questions? Right. I'll move.
No, we've had a move.
Oh, have you? Yes, sorry, you're well ahead of me. Okay, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. 10.8. Welcome, Helen Bailey.
Chairman, I've just got a question on the previous one that we've moved and seconded and carried. The Nongata Stream Civil Works, this is on page 115, 5.6 million. Chris, whoever, is that for the southern, what we call the southern bypass on the AMP showgrounds? That's what we've got in the budget for that Ngāti Whakaui land. That's what that's in our long-term plan budgets, 5.6 million. Correct? It is there. Wow, it's another big bucket of money to spend for flood protection.
Finished? Right, thank you.
Asked and answered, perfect.
Helen.
Kia ora koutou. I'll just introduce my replacement for Rosemary Cross, who's retired to Tasmania, Bailey Jackson. So Bailey's been promoted to the role of projects manager in the Rotorua Catchments team, replacing Rosemary, and Bailey was a land management officer in my team. So is experienced in building wetlands, which is what we're going to talk about today. So in the long-term plan that you've just approved, there was a pot of money for building constructed wetlands, which also attracts matched Crown funding. And these wetlands are being built to deliver the 50-tonne engineering solution component of the integrated framework, which is the framework to achieve that sustainable nitrogen load to Lake Rotorua by 2032, with the aim of, in the long term, removing the need for alum dosing. So this is generational change in land use and land management, and also with this engineering solutions component. So we need some technical expertise in order to design and deliver those wetlands. And what's proposed here today is a procurement plan in order for us to establish a panel of experts to help us with the design of those wetlands over that 10-year period as budgeted in the long-term plan. We've got some experience in building these already, and you've heard from Pim this morning about some of those, but also we've built one last year in the Winiatas wetland, and we've got more opportunities there in the Lake Rotorua catchment. We'll also review the success of these in achieving the objectives in terms of nitrogen reduction, but also carbon sequestration and biodiversity benefits as well, which is the good thing about these wetlands, as we move through those 5 yearly reviews which are required by Plan Change 10 in terms of the science of Lake Rotorua and our movement towards that generational change for that catchment. So other than that, take questions.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Moved, councillor Winters. Second to councillor Campbell. No further questions. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you.
10.9, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do need if you look at resolutions 9 and 10, it's an and or either or.
Oh, okay.
So that's the one which would enable the chair to attend the meeting virtually. Yeah.
Able to chair. That's the one I want.
Just wanted to get clarification on this before we get it on the table. I hesitate to say in 2BB, we've got a stray R at the very end. But I was a bit confused about G and H. They're either or. But is there an option where neither the chair or deputy chair can be present? It wasn't really clear to me from the explanation.
Onto that, and there is a provision in standing orders that if neither the chair nor the deputy chair is available, you appoint an acting chair for the purposes of that meeting, but of course that would then be driven by whether they can be online or in the room.
Question is, can we not have a situation where we are all on Zoom and it can be chaired by somebody on Zoom, because we already do that informally now, many meetings.
That's what happened with the most recent NAV safety meeting, for example.
And I'm thinking it actually makes a lot of sense. We never know when the next disaster is going to happen, when we may not be able to get together physically. And while we're reviewing this now, can we not consider having the ability to have everybody on Zoom and the chair does not have to be present? In a physical body?
Through the chair, absolutely. The provisions will allow for meetings to be 100% via Zoom, everyone counting towards the quorum. That particular provision is just at the moment, if you do have a hybrid meeting, the chair has to be physically in the room. It's for those particular situations, which puts limitations on a hybrid meeting, obviously. Yes.
So we do have provision for everybody to be on Zoom.
Absolutely.
Can we
This
make
will allow
this,
for that.
this clear that this is just for a hybrid situation when there's
I do believe there is in the event of a hybrid meeting, I've made a comment at the end of resolution recommendation, but I'll further expand on that.
Yes, just make it very clear. Thanks.
Absolutely, thank you.
So councillor Thompson, you've moved these and we need to resolve whether we're doing G or H. Is that right? Steve?
Correct, that's correct.
Right, which one do you recommend, councillor Thompson?
Well, sorry, I'm after the one where if the chair's on Zoom, they can still chair.
Yep, that's G.
That G?
Yep.
Delete H.
Well, that's what I'm moving. Anyway, all of those G, but not H. Yeah.
Delete H. Okay, is everybody clear? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Winters. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you.
Just a
Chair, I did have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Mr.
That's
Crosby.
all right. Steve, I'm very conscious of the protocol around having cameras on, and you have suffered more than 2 hours of looking at me on a very, very large screen, which is disconcerting, I'm sure, both to me and to my colleagues. My understanding is the protocol is that cameras do have to be on, and I completely understand that. But I've also been told we don't have the technology to minimise the people on the screen, which would be really helpful. What can we do about that? Or is that the protocol? And if so, what can we do about it?
Through the chair, I'm very happy to discuss that again with our IT department, and I'm sure now that we have developed our technology a wee bit, we can certainly work on that and make it happen. So we only get you in the smaller rather than quite so big.
Sorry, through you, Chair, can I just clarify that? Am I not allowed to attend by Zoom and have my camera off?
Ideally, according to our protocols, we do ask you to keep your camera on for the purposes of knowledge. However, we have been a little bit loose on that one because we keep an eye on who is on Zoom and we advise the chair accordingly. So it's been a work and simply a practical application of rules. In an ideal world, the protocols, though they're not legal, do say, please keep it on, but it's internal protocols. Thank you.
I think it's an interesting point, councillor Thompson, because there are occasions where the capacity of the internet is not good enough to have your camera on all the time. You get much better reception if it's off, but as long as we're flexible. Councillor Thurston?
But it's very disconcerting, like as Councillor Crosby has said, when you're sitting up there all day in Cinerama, you know, with and you're just looking at his mug and no one else's. You know, I can assume the reason we turn the camera off. Exactly.
Okay, so we can move on.
Just very quickly through the chair, can I ask you to do a show of hands so I can prove that it was a 75% majority? Thank you.
100%. Right, 10.2. Thanks, Steve. Quayside Holdings, Mr. Lecomte.
Move.
Thank you, councillor Thompson. It's moved. Seconded, councillor Winters. Any further commentary, Kamaran?
Councillors, the purpose of this report is just to give you an update on recent conversations held between Quayside and NZTA, with NZTA signalling designations likely to be sought towards the end of this calendar year, implying potential formal engagement on land transaction for this piece of land commencing as early as next month. And that's in keeping with council's decision at the October meeting last year for retaining the land to sell to NZTA to promote the outcomes of the Toriko West long-term project. So that looks like it's that objective is looking like to be achieved, and seeking council's approval for Quayside to progress discussions with with NZTA.
Councillor Nees,
Oh, just happy to second, fully support.
Councillor Winters,
So who gets the money?
Fiona,
Quayside will receive the funds for investment purposes, and that's currently the intent behind the transaction.
Myron, Councillor Shirley.
I understand we're buying a block of land off NZTA up by the Kaituna Bridge.
Yep.
I don't know where that is. Is there any chance of trading one off against the other, and that way? Oh, someone's shaking their head. I mean, that could be a worthwhile. I'm sure Tauriko is worth a lot more, but it could be part of the trade-off, and that would mean we'd get a wee bit more and Quayside might get a wee bit less.
So could I ask, this is designated as strategic asset, okay? We don't have to do all that consultation stuff if we pass this resolution today in terms of.
That's correct. It's not a strategic asset in terms of our significant engagement policy, so it doesn't require consultation. However, in our statement of expectation and statement of intent, we've said it's part of their strategic portfolio. So it's not an LGA strategic asset. It was just had a restriction. They couldn't do a general sale to any comer.
Okay, thank you. Monique?
Through you, Chair, just in relation to your comment, Councillor Shirley, we did actually address and raise that option with NZTA when we were negotiating for the other land purchases. I think because of the structure of how they were held, the land is held, it would have made the deal a lot more complicated, but we are on that matter waiting for feedback from NZTA. That's not concluded at this stage.
Councillor Scott?
It worries me having this conversation. It's an investment. It's a Quayside investment. It's not, and if we start saying, well, yeah, whenever you do any investment transactions, suddenly we want to have a bit of a grab, it ruins the investment aspect of what we expect Quayside to do. And it's a very dangerous road to go down.
Moved and second, haven't we? Yes. We've passed the whole thing. So I've got to put it. Okay, councillors, it's been moved and seconded. We're all clear. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carry.